Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. We're just getting you all hooked up. Bon, je vois beaucoup de monde, plusieurs de mes collègues. Excellent.
So I'm just about heading to another meeting here. So
Bon, bonjour tout le monde. Alors, je pense qu'on a admis presque tout le monde ici qui font partie de cette consultation. Bienvenue à cette consultation prébudgétaire parlementaire des Noirs. Welcome to the pre-budget consultations being organized by the Parliamentary Black Caucus. Before I begin with some introductions and we start going through the rules of the game, I just want to just give you a few things if we could. First of all, for those of you who do not speak both official languages, you might want to go to the bottom of your screen where there is an icon of a globe. Interpretation is written underneath it. If you click on that, you are able to choose either off, which means no translation whatsoever, or you could choose English or French channel, depending on the language preference of your choice. I encourage you all to make that selection at the front end of this presentation. The second thing which I'm going to ask, for those of you who do not have one yet, profit from this time if you can try to get yourselves a headset or earbuds with a microphone. The reason why I ask that is because we have use of our incredible translation services, and you know their professional tool largely are their ears. And when you use a microphone from a computer, it doesn't work very well. It takes in too much sound, which could be damaging to their ears. So as much as possible, if you can respect that, if you do not have earbuds or a headset with a microphone at your disposal right now, could you please try to get one before we call on you to make your presentation? Troisièmement, ce que je vais faire, je vais vous demander sincèrement de vous limiter à des présentations de 2 minutes. La raison pour laquelle vous demande ça, c'est parce que on a 3 heures de témoignage. On aimerait prendre autant que possible, autant du temps à vous poser des questions pour approfondir nos connaissances de votre proposition. Alors, s'il vous plaît, limitez-vous à 2 minutes. Je vais vous donner 2 signes par la main. Alors, la première chose, à 1 minute, je vais vous donner juste un petit doigt levé pour vous indiquer qu'il vous en reste 1 minute. Après ça, je vais faire quelque chose comme ça quand il vous reste 10 secondes. Alors, de cette façon-là, si tout le monde prend 2 minutes, on va passer à peu près 20 minutes, au plus tard 30 minutes de présentation qui nous laisse une autre 30 minutes pour poser des questions. Et comme à titre d'information, les questions, on va commencer avec les parlementaires en premier. Puis après ça, s'il va y avoir un débat entre les personnes qui comparaissent ici, on va vous laisser la parole. Bon, ce qu'on va... Et c'est important, autant que possible, de laisser votre micro en sourdine, sauf que quand on vous reconnaît, on vous cède la parole. This Black Parliamentary Caucus as something that has grown in size. It was first composed just of Black parliamentarians, but we realized how almost from the very beginning that there were so many of our parliamentary colleagues in the Senate and the House side who wanted to be part of the conversation because A, they have direct links to the Black community, or they have important Black populations in their ridings, or this is an issue of particular concern for them to making sure that all Canadians are treated equally, especially Black Canadians. And to that end, I'd like to present to you a number of my parliamentary colleagues, and I hope I will not have missed anybody as I introduce them to you. So our newest Black parliamentary colleague, Marcy Ian, has joined us today. She is a Member of Parliament from Toronto Centre. Lindsay Matheson is a Member of Parliament from London Fanshawe. The Honourable Hetty Fry, who is a Member of Parliament from Vancouver Centre. Ruby Sahota, who is our Member of Parliament from Brampton North. Jean Ip, who is our Member of Parliament from Scarborough Agincourt. Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, who is our member from Beaches, East York. Adam Vaughan, who is our member from Spadina, Fort York. Senator Mobina Jaffer, who is the senator from British Columbia. The Honorable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor, qui est notre député de Moncton Riverview Dieppe. Francesco Sobara, de Vaughan Woodbridge. On a aussi Adam Van Giverden, le député de Milton. Ikra Khalid, qui est le député de Mississauga, Erin Mills. Annie Koutrakis, qui est la députée de Vimy. On a Kamal Kara, notre grand ami député de Brampton West. On a aussi l'honorable Bardish Chagger, qui est la députée de Waterloo. Monsieur Samir Zuberi, le député de Pierrefonds-Dollard. We have Chandra Arya, who is a Member of Parliament from Nepean. Et aussi, on a la députée Marie-Hélène Gaudreau de Laurentide-Labelle. Alors, vous avez une bonne brochette de parlementaires qui vont participer aujourd'hui et j'espère qu'on va avoir une discussion très intéressante. Et on va commencer, séparer cette période de 3 heures en 3 parties. Alors, dans le premier groupe de panélistes, on a les prochaines personnes qui vont se présenter ou les prochaines organisations qui vont être représentées. So we have the ACCO and Ontario Tech University. We have also a representative from Simon Fraser University. We have a representative from the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario. We also have a group called the Community Alliance for Support and Empowerment, who will be speaking. We have Urban Res Solutions Social Enterprise, that will be speaking. We have the Council for the Advancement of African Canadians in Alberta, will be taking the mic. We have the Kingdom House Christian Center. We have Uni pour une intégration consciente au Canada. Ça, c'est the UNICC. We have, of course, the Jamaican Canadian Association. Nous avons le Conseil de la communauté noire de Gatineau. We have Innovate Incorporation. And we have buyblacks.com that will be making a presentation. And these are the groups that will be making a presentation in the first panel this afternoon. And hopefully we will finish in about an hour's time. Avec ça, j'aimerais aller au professeur Dr. Wesley Critchlow from the ACC and Ontario Tech University to start the discussions today. Dr. Critchlow, if you are there. All right. We might not have Dr. Critchlow or anybody from the ACC and Ontario Tech University. Then do we have Dr. Joy Johnson or Dr. Dugan O'Neill from Simon Fraser University?
Yes, I'm here, and thank you very much for inviting me and Dugan to speak to you today. I want to begin by
2 minutes.
2 minutes. I want to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking to you today this morning from the unceded traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam people. As Canada's engaged university, Simon Fraser University works with communities, organizations, and partners to create and share and embrace knowledge that improves life and generates real change. And I think historically, the power and promise of what gets referred to as big data analytics have not been applied to benefit society's most vulnerable. As Jean Augustine said yesterday, we need to collaborate nationally to develop informed recommendations, and we need to act now. So SFU's Equity Data Commons that we're proposing is going to ensure that people from all backgrounds benefit from innovation by creating an intersectional data analytics platform and a network across Canada that can help community groups with their equity work. This is an investment that we're asking for of $10 million over 3 years, and it's being sought for a national hub for race-based and intersectional data analysis in Canada. The major events of 2020, I think, have really underscored the deep societal inequities that continue to exist and how our public institutions, including universities, have really underserved those who need us the most. And Canada needs to build a robust practice of disaggregating data below the level of major racial groups and linking that data to the factors that really influence health and well-being. And that's what this data commons is about. This data exists in Canada. More than 170,000 nonprofit and charitable organizations have data. The Equity Data Commons is being co-designed with a number of these groups to serve their needs. So we believe that combining the Equity Data Commons expertise and data analytics platform with community groups' understanding of social issues, including things like poverty alleviation, homelessness, the need for education and healthcare, and really looking at this from an intersectional lens can help address this data gap and help support the creation of targeted policies and initiatives. I want to thank the caucus for inviting me today and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and I'm certain we'll have some questions at the end. I'm turning now to, I think it's Lisa Bailey from the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario, or is there a representative from the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario who is present?
Here.
Marvelous. Please.
Are you hearing me well?
We can hear you very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Minister Fergus, and the rest.
just Greg.
Okay.
just Greg.
The rest of the members of the Black Caucus, thank you for organizing this session and inviting us to take part. The Sickle Cell Association of Ontario has been serving members of the sickle cell community since its founding in 1981. We support people that are living with sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease is the world's #1 genetic blood disorder, affecting people from all races, but primarily people within the Black community. In supporting the members of the community, the Sickle Cell Association uses a care model. So we do counseling, advocacy, raising awareness, and education. As part of our advocacy work this year, we have focused on trying to improve the lives of sickle cell patients by implementing a universal healthcare protocol for hospitals in all hospitals across Ontario. We have been fortunate to work with the Black Caucus of the NDP in Ontario and was able to bring a bill to the floor on November 19th to push this initiative forward. So as part of that, we want to work with the federal government to also implement a registry for people living with sickle cell disease so that we have the data needed to properly serve the community. In addition to the registry, we also want to add sickle cell disease as a recognized disability to the Canada Pension Act so that members of the community who are suffering with this lifelong incurable disease can access disability benefits from the Canada Pension Act.
Perfect. That was great. 10 seconds to go. Thank you very much, Lisa. and I will certainly have questions for you on that at the end.
Yeah.
The next group that we have is the Community Alliance for Support and Empowerment. I hope that Peace Okpara or Beulah Okerke is available.
Yes, Peace Okpara is here.
Great, Peace. Please, the floor is yours. The only thing, I'm sorry, I should have said this before, and this is not taking away from your time. For all of you who do have headsets, there's just one additional thing that you might do. If you go to the bottom left of your screen near that microphone icon, you just click on the arrow and just make sure that you select that the microphone is the actual headset that you're using. Because if you don't actually select it, it will just use your computer's microphone. That way, again, the sound is more directed. It doesn't take in as much of the exterior or external sounds around you. So please, go right ahead.
Are you hearing me well now?
We can hear you.
Okay. I hope my colleague is also on the other side. And thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate what you people are doing. That is a grassroots way of doing it. My name is Peace Okpara, and I am here with my colleague, Beulah Okerke. We are here to represent our organization. We support both seniors and youth. However, we are here to speak for the youth, especially when it comes to the education part of it. As we all know, education is one of the bedrock for growth of a nation. And as a grassroots community organization, we stand in commitment and support of the government at all levels and our sister organizations to address anti-Black racism in our education system and improve outcomes for Black students. Because of time, I just have to go direct to the recommendation. We have one recommendation that the government take actions to stop any discriminatory treatment of Black children in Canadian schools. Many teachers treat Black children differently than their peers, starting from junior kindergarten. The Black children, they go into an educational system marked with deficit and problematic, and in some cases, the parents are pressured into to consenting to the child being of a high need, or maybe like a special need child. So consequently, under that, they are not able to achieve their desires and then the hope of their parents. Then we are thinking about the solutions, identifying and creating training opportunities for teachers on anti-Black racism, Black culture, competence, diversity and inclusion, ethical practices, classroom positive relationship building with students, rather than stereotyping our Black students. And it is also important to know that the children are the developing at the developing stage, and it's crucial that their learning environment be friendly and safe for good character to be built up. And they will have recommendation too. I hope we still have time for that.
I'm afraid we've gone to 2.25 minutes, but I know that there will be questions for you, Peace, which will give you an opportunity to get a little deeper into the issues which you raised. So thank you very much for raising that important question about the role that the teaching profession plays in giving Black students the opportunity to appreciate education and to go further and not face racism. I would like to move to Urban Res Solution Social Enterprise. And I hope that Rod Brereton is here, or Farley Flex. I think I saw Farley earlier. Rod or Farley? All right, we will we'll do a little follow-up later on. We'll move on to the next group. The Council for the Advancement of African Canadians in Alberta. Okay. Je vois qu'il y a un représentant de unique, c'est Uni pour une intégration consciente au Canada. J'ai vu Thierry Gohungu qui est ici. Je ne sais pas si Lionel l'accompagne aujourd'hui, mais Thierry, je vous cède la parole. 2 minutes, s'il vous plaît. Je vais vous donner un signal après 1 minute. Et puis, quand il vous reste 10 secondes, je vais vous donner une deuxième
Merci
signal.
beaucoup. Merci de nous avoir donné l'opportunité de venir vous parler de nos recommandations.
Thierry, ça c'est une autre affaire. Avez-vous bien choisi le microphone? Parce qu'il semble que vous êtes très loin de votre micro.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Est-ce que ça c'est mieux?
Technology.
Sélectionnez votre micro.
J'ai sélectionné mon micro.
C'est le micro de votre casque?
No, Greg is talking.
Une seconde.
Peux-tu fermer? Good.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez mieux?
Non, malheureusement, je vais juste demander aux interprètes, est-ce que ça c'est mieux? Donc, pouvez-vous continuer à parler pour un petit peu?
Allô, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Continuez à juste parler un petit peu pour 10 secondes.
Donc, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Non, c'est pas assez clair. Thierry, je pense qu'on a votre numéro de téléphone. Quelqu'un des services TI va vous appeler, puis on va tenter de vous ajuster les paramètres pour que le micro va bien fonctionner. Alors, merci beaucoup pour ça. On vous revient.
Merci.
Let's move on to Adoma Patterson from the Venerable Jamaican Canadian Association. I must declare a bias. I am of Jamaican descent. So there you go.
Good afternoon, Greg, and the Black Caucus. Thank you so much. You're hearing me okay? I think
so. Just bring the microphone just a little closer to your mouth. Is that okay for interpretation? A little signal?
Are you good?
Can you talk for just 10 seconds?
All right.
Give us your name and address.
Yes, Adoma.
Adoma.
Adoma Patterson, the Jamaican Canadian Association.
Okay, it's great. Please.
You're good? All right. I've turned it up a little bit more. Okay, thank you. So thanks so much for the opportunity. We have 3 recommendations, my colleague David Betty and I, that really address the economic, social, cultural, and employment opportunities for the Black community. So the first recommendation is ongoing funding for Black cultural spaces across the country. The JCA Center and many other organizations have been providing an important space for the community to gather for important advocacy, celebrations, fundraising, and programs for the benefit of the community. Owning and maintaining community centers is critical to ensuring our history and footprint is known. It contributes economically by hiring vendors and contractors, entertainers, musicians, etc. And it ensures space that is accessible and affordable, particularly in markets like Toronto, where space is at a premium. For many years, Black organizations have not been able to access sufficient funds to upgrade, enhance, or build centers for our community. And so we think that this is sort of a quick win. Okay, the second is community benefits. We're asking the federal government to continue to commit to including community benefits in large infrastructure projects that are funded with tax dollars. So for our purposes, community benefits is defined as providing training, employment, procurement opportunities for Black, Indigenous, and other vulnerable communities. These opportunities are often not accessible to many. These employment opportunities, especially for NEET youth, so those that are not in employment, education, and training. And we think that, again, it's an opportunity to be able to open doors for members of the Black community. And then the final one is funding for initiatives that strengthen our community. So we believe there are opportunities to invest in specific initiatives, and 2 that I'm mentioning is the Pan-African Credit Union initiative, which is will be an Ontario credit union, and then the CPAD, the Institute for People of African Descent. Both of these are critical for economic empowerment and to build the capacity of our community organizations and small businesses. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Adoma. I really do appreciate that. So again, I got it for the Pan-African Credit Union. And what was the second? CPAD.
So yeah, CPAD, yes. And then community benefits and Black cultural.
Perfect. Thank you for that. All right. We're still working on the technical side for Thierry Gohangu, but let us move to, I see that Jessica Yamoa is here. Jessica will be speaking on Innovate Incorporated. Jessica, if you could, you have 2 minutes. If you could just bring the microphone to your mouth, that would be great.
Sure, thank you, Greg. Merci beaucoup.
So Jessica Yamwa of Innovate Inc. So the Innovate or the Inc. represents inclusion as well as incorporation in terms of business. And we want to thank you for your allyship and the advocacy you've done on behalf of the Black community. One of our core competencies is connections, and connections in the term of Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. So we really leverage those in terms of inclusive prosperity in the context of business and technology. And one of those key elements of connections is collaboration. So in that spirit and theme, I would like to hand the conversation over to one of our collaborators, William Silvas.
Hi, my name is Will Selvies, and I'm considered
Will,
a newcomer.
if I could ask you to move the microphone closer to your mouth, it seems that, or I don't know if you've selected it.
Yep, it is.
Is that okay, folks?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me better?
No, it's picking up a lot of sound outside of you. It's the microphone. It has a big echo.
Can you hear me better now?
It hasn't changed.
Let's see. Let's try this one last time.
Sorry, folks, but this is that's much better.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, thank you. My name is Will Selvies. I'm considered a newcomer despite having studied in Canada for the past 7 years. I specialize in 3D design and animation. My practice combined tech and design in the music, cannabis, and fashion industries. I'm a recent Oak University graduate, entering the workforce full-time and aspiring to become a Canadian citizen. With the growing need for remote work solutions, creatives like myself have gravitated towards 3D design, but barriers such as basic equipment costs, formal sponsorship programs, industry-specific capital investment, and sustainable employment limit access for the Black community. The global 3D animation market size was valued at 13.75 billion in 2018, and is expected to expand to 28.3 billion by 2025. In Canada alone, 3D and visual effects animation services generated 70% of total industry sales in 2017. Domestic clients accounted for 82.1% of that. My industry contribution include work with Nike Canada, the Canadian Soccer Association, the City of Mississauga, and the City of Vancouver. I asked for capital investment set aside of 10 million over the next 3 years with criteria that are inclusive of immigration status and that recognize the unique characteristics of new media and its revenue generating potential. Jessica will conclude with the final asks.
Thank you, Will.
20 seconds to you, Jessica.
Perfect. So to sum up Will's ask, it was specific to youth and some of the areas that they're very focused on. The second ask is that the Parliament as a collective does not equate confidence with capability. There's a number of people that are coming out of the woodworks because there are these investments and there's these resources that are available. We ask that you recognize communities. Oh,
if you can just quickly get
sure,
right to
that you recognize those communities, and with 1.78 million single parent homes, that there's a focus on GBA plus analysis that is inclusive of Black, African Caribbean women.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Folks, sorry to be so strict, but we are trying as best as possible to making sure that we get into questions and answers, which is really where a lot of the material comes up. So try to get straight to your recommendations, and then we can add on we add flesh to the skeleton afterwards. Great. So thank you for that, Jessica and William. If we could, si on peut passer le Conseil de la communauté noire de Gatineau. Aïchatou Touré, qui est là, puis aussi Kathleen Pierre.
Oui, bonjour Greg, est-ce que vous m'entendez bien?
Oui, on vous entend très bien, merci.
Super. Bonjour à tous. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais vous remercier de l'opportunité que vous nous donnez aujourd'hui de pouvoir contribuer à la réflexion collective. Je suis aujourd'hui avec ma collègue Kathleen, comme vous l'avez mentionné. Nous sommes une organisation à but non lucratif qui fait la promotion des intérêts socio-économiques de la communauté noire et organisons des activités pour sensibiliser les citoyens à Gatineau sur la diversité et la richesse du patrimoine culturel de notre communauté. Donc, vous comprendrez bien que nous félicitons les efforts qui ont été faits jusqu'à présent et nous pensons qu'on doit continuer dans cette lancée. Nous, les priorités que nous avons, c'est vraiment la jeunesse en ce moment. Donc, les jeunes de nos communautés font face à de nombreux défis. Les derniers mois ont été particulièrement difficiles pour eux, que ce soit dans les systèmes scolaires ou encore dans la recherche d'emploi ou de stage. Je pense que plusieurs de mes collègues l'ont mentionné. Nous savons aussi que les périodes de pandémie ou des périodes difficiles comme celle-là affectent encore plus les groupes qui sont déjà fragilisés. Donc, notre première recommandation, c'est vraiment que le gouvernement fournisse un financement pour soutenir les jeunes de la communauté noire à faire face aux défis liés au racisme et à la discrimination discrimination et pour soutenir la réussite professionnelle à travers différents projets dans différents domaines, tels que, puis je pense que William aussi l'a mentionné tout à l'heure, mais des domaines tels que la science, les technologies, l'entrepreneuriat, la mode, la production cinématographique, les médias, comme l'a mentionné Monsieur Dr. Vibe un peu plus tôt ce matin. Donc, la sensibilisation et l'éducation, c'est notre prochain point. J'ai suivi plusieurs des interventions de ce matin et je pense que sans surprise, l'éducation, la sensibilisation, c'est la base pour pouvoir apporter des changements durables dans notre société. Quand on parle d'éducation, on parle non seulement de l'importance de connaître la vraie histoire des Noirs, pas seulement l'esclavage, la colonisation, mais également la déconstruction des stéréotypes, des préjugés, des biais inconscients à tous les niveaux dans toute la société. Donc, nous avons tous des préjugés, mais comment nous les adressons est la question et vraiment la solution. Notre deuxième recommandation est donc que le gouvernement mette en place des outils d'éducation sur l'histoire des Noirs et de sensibilisation pour déconstruire les stéréotypes, les préjugés et les biais inconscients dans nos institutions. Le dernier, ça va être un peu particulier. Nous, en fait, on est en train de penser, il y a plusieurs intervenants qui ont parlé des professionnels, mais l'intégration économique des nouveaux arrivants est très importante et elle passe par la reconnaissance des diplômes. Donc, notre dernière recommandation, c'est que le gouvernement prenne des mesures efficaces et stratégiques visant la reconnaissance des diplômes obtenus à l'étranger et facilite l'intégration des détenteurs de ces diplômes au marché du travail. Merci, Greg.
Bravo, merci beaucoup. 3 minutes de commentaires en 2 minutes. Bien fait. I'd like to turn to buyblacks.com. Is Roger or Camille Dundas on the line? Okay. Let's go back to Dr. Critchlow. Are we, or do you think that we might be in a good position here?
We can try.
Perfect. That sounds better and it sounds full.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Wesley. Je ne parle français. I try. As you, my suggestion in terms of what I had sent to your office, Greg, and to the Black Caucus is that in the midst of the International Decade for People of African Descent, I, as a professor, had submitted a discussion paper to the Canadian Institute for People of African Descent, in which they are engaging in community initiatives. And I strongly recommended in this paper that the Canadian government needs to, in the midst of the current international decade, need to respond to the formation of an apology for slavery in Canada and the formation of a national reparation committee. I think these things are critical insofar that it will help address the atrocities of slavery and help the persistent racial wealth gap for African Canadians. The submission paper that I submitted to the CIPD is available from them if you would like to get a copy of it. But I do think that as we move forward, I will stop right here. Done. Thank you.
Oh, no. You have 1 more minute.
Oh, okay. I do think that as we engage in this work, it's important to consider the International Day for the Remembrance of Victims of Slavery and Transatlantic Slave Trade. And that could be the day in which such a committee or commission is announced. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And that was a very good connection as well. I would like to go back to Thierry Gohango. Are we on correct? Oh, okay. So we're going to have a little test. We'll get back to them. But we...
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Ça, vous m'entendez?
Est-ce que ça va pour les interprètes?
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Peux-tu juste dire quelques mots par rapport
Bonjour,
à la météo?
Maintenant, il fait froid à Québec. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, ça va aller, mais parler assez clair, d'une façon assez limpide, si c'est possible. Allez-y.
D'accord. Je voudrais d'abord vous remercier pour cette opportunité que vous nous offrez. Donc, je suis en compagnie de mon collègue Lionel pour représenter l'association Unie pour une intégration consciente au Canada. Et je vais aller tout droit aux recommandations. Donc, la première recommandation, nous demandons à ce qu'on appuie le processus d'intégration des nouveaux arrivants sur le marché du travail, comme l'a dit ma collègue Aïchatou, mais aussi le développement des communautés noires, en subventionnant les organisations à but non lucratif qui sont dirigées par les Noirs et qui travaillent sur l'intégration des nouveaux arrivants. 2, en accordant des stages au gouvernement, parce qu'en général, on nous exige quand on arrive ici d'avoir une expérience canadienne, mais cette expérience canadienne, on ne l'a pas si on ne donne pas cette chance. 3, en subventionnant des entreprises qui sont dirigées par les Noirs, parce que le développement, l'épanouissement des communautés noires va passer aussi par leur développement économique. La deuxième recommandation, ça serait de soutenir l'intégration des médecins diplômés à l'étranger et des États-Unis en finançant ou en octroyant des bourses, des prêts pour ces médecins qui sont en préparation de leur examen et de leur stage, en finançant des programmes de préparation et des stages de ces médecins, mais aussi en mettant en place un observatoire qui aura comme rôle de chien de garde pour garantir la transparence et l'équité. La troisième recommandation serait de lutter contre la discrimination et le racisme dans le cadre de l'emploi, l'accession aux postes de responsabilité. On voit qu'il y a beaucoup de Noirs qui sont très scolarisés, mais qui n'accèdent pas aux postes de responsabilité, et en mettant en place notamment un comité qui fera le suivi et d'arbitrage. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Thierry, pour cette présentation. Je pense que vous avez touché un corde sensible par rapport à la reconnaissance des compétences des nouveaux arrivants au Canada. Do we have Rod Brereton back with us? Or Farley Flex? All right, I'm going to just make a couple of more calls then. Well, actually, I think that's it, unless there's anybody else who hasn't had a chance to present who was scheduled in that first round. If not, then we'll go straight to questions. So how this is going to work is that I will ask our parliamentary colleagues to raise their blue hand on the chat function or the participants function of Zoom, and so that we can ask questions of any of the presenters here today. And if you'll allow me, I would like to ask the first question, if I could. And there are a lot of them, but so the first one is to Dr. Johnson. You had called for the importance of disaggregated data for us to try to get to the nub of the differential results. The Parliamentary Black Caucus has taken a strong stand on this and agrees with you. Can I ask you, can you share some of your thoughts you have on what framework should be created, if there should be any, on the use of that data?
Yeah, so our perspective, thanks for that question. Our perspective is that we need to work in partnership with community groups. I think that we can develop an overall frame that would be intersectional, but we need to work with groups and co-create a process by which the data can be held and utilized and analyzed by the groups themselves. So often these groups don't have the expertise themselves to actually do the data analytics. So part of the platform, part of the network is providing that expertise. And certainly Statistics Canada is another organization we will look to working closely with and have done so to date.
Excellent. Adam Vaughn has the next question before I have a couple more. So Adam?
You don't always have to bump me in line, Greg. You can you can take your full suite of questions whenever you need to, please. I guess just building on that, Dr. Critchlow, we've discussed the creation of data sets from a community-based perspective and from a sort of a different process than the pure academic collection of data. I was wondering if you could comment on what you just heard and talk about some of your ideas around how to use community-based groups to do the data collection and analysis, as well as some of the ethical challenges around that from an academic perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Adam. I think one of the things we must distinguish when we collect the data is, in terms of community ownership, is what I would like to call data justice. You can have data, but the data can sometimes be a block or obstacle to creating policy, because time you study it, you get it, government change. Now, in terms of data justice, community agencies don't know how to use data. So I think some of the things we first want to talk about is who is going to own the data when we have it? Who is going to control the data? How are community agencies going to have access to that data? How are we going to pull together the work that SHIRC and CIRC Tri-Council has done, community agencies have done around data issues? In other words, we need to first find out what data sets already exist and how can we disaggregate them to make them intelligible. Overall, I think the First Nations communities have developed an incredible framework for how we should collect data and how they can own that data. And it's within that context, I think, when we're talking about that disaggregated data within the context of the Black communities, we need to talk about ownership of the data and not just simply data that is controlled by the government, because the data can be misused and misused for the wrong purposes, and it can also be used for the right purposes. But if community agencies are trained to understand how to make intelligible the reading of data, then I think we can have a better partnership around making intelligible data sources and databases.
Before I was going to just dig a little deeper on that one, Dr. Critchlow, so if you don't mind keeping your mic on. I think first of all, could you send us the information that you have? Because I had not heard that the Indigenous community has a framework developed on data use, so that would be great to have as a reference. Yeah. And secondly, when you were talking, I'll be frank, I'm concerned about how some police services use data.
Yes.
Because there are wrong ways to use data.
Yeah.
And there are wrong ways to interpret data. There's a way to only see the mist of forest because of the trees. And so I just want to get your comments on that.
I think the idea that somehow data can somehow rid ourselves of social problems is on the one part true, but we also know that we don't need data to address anti-Blackism. We don't address, there is enough out there to say we know what some of the social problem again would, because you have asked for data, these facts. So if you want to say against communities more than about a policy advancement for addressing structural issues. So I'll be always cautious when someone asks for data. My question always would be, for what purpose? Who is going to use it, and what do you want to change? And what is your time frame for making that change? Have you put into place some reasonable time frames and structures in which when we get this data, it's going to be changed? And above all, what's the role of the community in the data?
And actually, could I jump in? It's Jessica Amwa, Innovate Inc. From a business and a technology perspective. My background is sales and marketing technology. I've worked for some brands that you might be familiar with, including Apple and Nokia. But the other context being ownership in terms of the data not only being housed or created by an academic entity, but rather, I'm not sure of your name, but you made a comment about the community not having the ability to create the data or whatnot. The algorithm for the Instagram and some of these other social platforms was created by a Ghanaian boy who was under 25 years old. So there is the capacity and there is the ability within the community to create these data sets. This information. I think it's an ecosystem and a collaboration used in a certain capacity. So ensuring that the funding and the resources and investments are done in the community, and in the opposite of how things have usually worked, where big academic institutions that are not institutionally inclusive of us are inclusive and are mandated to work with us as partners, but also the ownership and the direction is within the African, Caribbean, and Black communities.
So thank you so much for that, because I mean, if you don't mind me just adding quickly to that, because I think that is a well-made point, and I didn't want to say it in those words, but thank you. We have to be cautious of when an academic, regardless of their race, wants to collect data in the Black community. We have to also ensure that if they're funded, that money should go to community agencies. They should be accountable to the community agency throughout the process. The money should never go to the university, because academics doing research do research to promote their academic research, their academic agendas. It is never about promoting the interests of the community. And we're very clear about that. And as an academic, when you do research, you are advancing your own academic trajectory. So race-based data entirely ignores existing inequalities. And so we need to make a different claim, a claim that was begin from scratch, one in which we need to rethink, reimagine what it means to engage in race-based data for the Black community, and not—
And to your point, and I think to your point, there are spaces within academia where I think there are people from our communities that are trying to do the work. Someone earlier mentioned Dr. Carl James, and there's a few other people, Dr. Caroline Shanwaz Hussain. There are people within our community who are making the efforts and want to do those things. I think from an institutional standpoint, part of the challenge is if they haven't done it to date, the fact that there are resources available now should not be their motivation. If the motivation was there, it should have been done well before this point of COVID, well before this point of our government making significant investments within the ABC communities. Thank you.
I have a question from Marcy Ian, as well as from Adam Vaughn.
Hi, it's so good to be. Hi, thanks so much, Greg. It's so good to be here. This is most interesting. Both my son and daughter have the sickle cell trait. So I had a question for Lisa Bailey. And Lisa, you talked about the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario not being recognized, or sickle cell rather, not being recognized as a disability for the Canada Pension Act. Is there a certain threshold? And if there is, what is it? And has your organization reached it?
To really be recognized for the Canada Pension Act disability, basically you have to have a disease which is prolonged and will eventually lead to death. You have to be under 65, and you have had to work in Canada, obviously, to pay into the plan. Within our community, the sickle cell community, we do have members of the community that does meet that threshold. Sickle cell disease is a lifelong disease. It's in its more severe cases, we have patients who are in the hospital months on end, and because of that, they can't hold that full-time job. So therefore, they do qualify for disability. Because it's a disease that you may have it for, the lifespan now is in your 40s, 50s. So that sort of is working, that criteria is sort of working against us in like that. You're not going to pass away next week kind of thing. But at the same time, you have a disability that is damaging your body on a daily basis and is preventing you from holding a full-time job. And until we find a cure, it's uncurable, and it will eventually lead to you passing away. So we have to either work with the government to kind of educate a little bit more on what sickle cell is and what the eventual outcome is, and what the challenges are with the community that's trying to apply for disability, in the fact that they're in the hospital far more times of the year than they're able to work. And when they are able to work, they simply can't, physically can't work. And also mentally, because it takes a toll on your mental status as well. So basically the threshold for sickle cell, for qualifying for a pension, for disability under the pension, yes, sickle cell does meet it. And there isn't any reason why it shouldn't be recognized.
Ms. Bailey, on that front, your organization is based in Ontario. Is Ontario a leader in terms of its medical profession having a standard operating procedure of asking the question of mostly their Black Canadian patients whether or not they've done the test?
Well, in Ontario, we were instrumental in getting sickle cell added to newborn screening. So every child born in Ontario since 2006 is tested for sickle cell disease. For the adult population, the association is the leader in educating the adult population and making sure that they go and get tested if they weren't born in Ontario after 2006 or have come from different places. So the association does that. What we're doing also is working with the health providers here as part of the bill that we have on the floor that sickle cell patients are getting in the ER. Data will be collected at that point based on how many times they're there, how long they're there, and there will be some race-based data collected as part of that bill.
Perfect. Thank you. Adam Vaughn. And Adam, before you, I'm going to ask you just for you to raise your microphone just a little bit.
Yeah. I don't have her first name, but there's a hand up for Black Women United. I just wanted to make sure they weren't checking in on Marcy's question.
Hi, thank you. I'm Janetta Jamerson with Black Women United. And just getting back to the whole topic of academics and how they coalesce with community. So we're in Edmonton, Alberta, and we have had a number of interactions with Black academics, most of them out east, but a few here as west. And just because of the nature of our work, have wanted some form of engagement. And I'm going to tell you that those interactions have been terrible, terrible. So for us, just at the community level, it seems that there's folks here on this call that kind of know, and I heard the one sister who works with Nokia, you know, you seem to know that there might be some people that are already credible, doing good work, and have worked with community in a good way. And we would be interested in knowing who some of those people are. We don't want to add to the terrible list and make it any longer than it is.
Thanks. Sorry, I saw your hand go up and I thought there was a response that was pending. And thanks for the contribution. The question I have is for Adoma in terms of capital investment. It's a two-part question, so I sorry for a bit of a ramble here. But on the one hand, many of the cultural expressions that come out of organizations like yourselves have a business side to them, and many of the business models that you nurture have a cultural component to them, and yet our federal departments tend to sort of point you in two different directions simultaneously. You're too much culture for a business proposal, and you're too much business for a culture proposal. And I'm curious as to how you would reconcile that process and what that would look like. And then I'll ask a second question and follow up to that in terms of the capital remarks that the comments you made around capital funding.
Sure. Make sure you're hearing me okay. So thank you for that, Adam. Yeah, so we're exactly in this sort of conflict right now. Part of the sustainability model that you know, I think Black organizations that own facilities or have property, part of our challenge is converting that business to officially a social enterprise. You know, so for many years, of course, we didn't even know that language of social enterprise. We didn't know that's really what we were running. And so to make the model sustainable, it is a business. And we have embraced and are trying to embrace the work and the focus that the federal government has been putting on, you know, social enterprise. Organizations need the support to do that, you know, the business planning, because we come to it from the cultural side. And so it's not the first thing sort of that we think about. And how do you know, forecast 5 years out for our hall rental business, for example, you know, or creating common space for small businesses. You know, we've made it work. So there is the one aspect. So support to help organizations transition officially part of their model to the social enterprise. And then the other is around the cultural programming, which I think comes through your multiculturalism. I don't even know what that's called anymore. Where that's the traditional bucket where we have always been able to apply. And really, we could never use the funds for the infrastructure. It's very hard to get funding at the provincial, municipal, or federal level for infrastructure. And so you have, like, our property is 22,000 square feet. That requires a lot of maintenance. So we get the money for the cultural programming, but you know, then we can't sustain the building. So I think the way to reconcile that is to acknowledge that, you know, maybe social enterprise for organizations. You have a community kitchen, you can rent that out for programming. You could do training, kids, you know, you're training young people, you're helping seniors. There's a bunch of ways to convert some of the part of our model into social enterprise, and then still fund the traditional cultural programs. So that may be the way, is to make the distinction, but we definitely need support on the social enterprise piece.
Ida Sadhu was on, and we've had a number of these sessions over the last couple of days. Ida Sadhu was on. One of the remarks that she made, and was that she's being paid to rent a microphone, more times than it would. She's been paid so many times she could have bought one and never had to come back for a second grant if she had been given capital grants instead of operating grants.
Right.
And this perpetual sort of sense of being in a temporary space with a temporary program is undermining the effectiveness of the investments that do come out of government. That being said, there is a lot of competition between organizations when capital dollars are put on the table, in large part because it's so far and few between the opportunities. But the triage, the grant assessment process at the federal level is done in an environment that is not necessarily as attuned as it should be towards the experience of Black and African Canadian led organizations. And so I would like your thoughts on if capital dollars are made available in the same way that we're using intermediaries like Tropicana and Transet and the Nova Scotia Black Business Initiative, what you might see as a mechanism to sort the strong applications from the applications that need more work, so that we're actually funding strength and building on strength as opposed to just trying to cover all bases. What would you see as an appropriate way of adjudicating capital grants, especially in a competitive environment like Toronto?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if I have the easy answer. What I would say is that whatever process you choose should involve the community in some respect. So similar to the 200 million in terms of small business, and other initiatives, you've engaged us in determining what that looks like. At the end of the day, there are a lot of organizations. Not everyone has a building or cultural space, and not everyone will. Not everyone wants that. Into the Toronto area, you probably maybe have sort of 10-ish that are on your radar. And so I think it's a question of just having us come together and determining and involving us in whatever that looks like. So we're looking, I think there's the scalable. So they're the ones who are looking to purchase property. And then there are those that already exist then that need the support. So you actually have the two. And so, part of the funding has to go for either of those. Once you have a building, that sustenance, that maintenance is then the problem, right? So even if we think about community hub models in the long term, what is required to sustain those? No one ever wants to fund a roof, like it's not, or a furnace, but you can't operate your building, you can't sustain your building without those things. So you've got the two. Capital has to address the ongoing and then the new. And of course, the new come into the pipeline more slowly because, as you say, it's quite competitive. And then it's a lot of extra work. So just involving us in that process.
I have two quick questions on the issue of recognizing academic qualifications from abroad. But before I get into that, Adoma, I was wondering if you could very briefly answer this question, because you've provided a very good nuance, but also I just want to make sure that we understand the context of this. Is it your experience that organizations that have four walls and a roof tend to be the organizations that last longer, that can survive different generations of leadership, or do you not see any correlation between that? In other words, I'm trying to get at, is it important to have capital costs as part of the funding mechanism?
Well, it's important to have capital costs, because I think as a community we need spaces. I'm not the expert. I don't want to answer that. I can't answer that outside of the Toronto area. For example, many organizations do have buildings. They may have small ones, and they've managed to make it work. But as we think about how competitive the landscape is in terms of fundraising, donors, that becomes harder. And I think the two things helping us as a business and really getting to the business model, providing that seed and the expertise, as well as the capital for things like repairs, should go hand in hand.
Okay. Alors, ma question concernant les compétences, la reconnaissance des compétences, j'aimerais poser cette question le Conseil de la communauté noire du Gatineau, puis aussi UNIC. Vous avez parlé et faisait partie de votre ça fait partie de vos recommandations. Pouvez-vous juste approfondir ou renchérir vos commentaires concernant l'importance de la reconnaissance des compétences pour les nouveaux arrivants au Canada?
Oui, je peux commencer et puis Thierry pourra compléter. En fait, c'est vraiment important lorsqu'on parle de l'intégration. On sait que l'intégration socio-économique des gens passe vraiment à travers la recherche et l'obtention d'un emploi. Et souvent, les nouveaux arrivants, j'aime dire, ils se retrouvent dans le cercle vicieux du premier emploi, première expérience. On n'arrive pas à avoir la première expérience, on n'arrive pas à avoir le premier emploi. Donc, qu'est-ce qui vient avant? Et souvent, justement, la reconnaissance des diplômes, qui est une étape supplémentaire, les ralentit vraiment dans cette obtention de premier emploi lorsqu'ils arrivent au Canada. Thierry a mentionné, je pense, des exemples en termes de médecins, mais il y a plusieurs autres ordres qui sont très sélectifs pour lesquels c'est très difficile pour les gens qui arrivent de pouvoir intégrer le marché du travail. On le dit souvent, combien de chauffeurs de taxi ont des diplômes d'ingénieur ou de médecine à l'extérieur et ils n'arrivent pas à avoir cette reconnaissance ici. Donc, je pense qu'il y a des mécanismes qui devraient être mis en place pour vraiment aider l'intégration de ces personnes-là. Et je pense que le gouvernement fédéral, autant que les autres gouvernements municipaux et provinciaux, devraient pouvoir montrer l'exemple justement en ayant plus de programmes de stage aussi pour ces personnes-là, pour pouvoir les intégrer rapidement sur le milieu du travail, pour pouvoir les intégrer dans certains domaines d'expertise ici au Canada. Mais c'est vraiment un enjeu pour la plupart des immigrants qui arrivent avec des diplômes. On pense souvent que les immigrants n'ont pas d'éducation, mais au contraire, les immigrants arrivent avec des grands diplômes et justement, c'est cette désillusion qu'ils ont lorsqu'ils arrivent de ne pas pouvoir exploiter ces connaissances et ces ressources-là qu'ils ont. Et lorsqu'on regarde, oui.
Effectivement, ils sont plus scolarisés que les Canadiens qui sont nés ici.
Exactement.
Ouais.
Moi, je voudrais aussi renchérir. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez.
Oui.
Oui, donc effectivement, comme ma collègue Aïchatou vient de le dire, Greg aussi, les études montrent que les immigrants sont en général très scolarisés. Mais aussi, les données nous montrent que les taux de chômage restent démesurément élevés chez ces Canadiens qui immigrent au Canada. Donc, il y a un manque d'alignement entre les besoins du Canada, mais aussi donc, les talents qui viennent au Canada. L'exemple que Aïchatou a donné est parlant. Donc, vous verrez beaucoup de médecins qui conduisent des taxis, alors qu'on sait qu'un Québécois sur 5 n'a pas de médecin de famille. Et ces gens, ce sont des gens qui ont étudié la médecine parce qu'ils avaient à cœur le besoin d'aider, de sauver des vies. Mais ces gens, même si on leur demandait de retourner faire la première année à la faculté de médecine ici au Canada, ils vont dire oui. Mais sauf que les portes sont fermées. Donc, ils disent qu'il faut passer des examens. Il n'y a pas un cadre vraiment structuré d'accueil, d'intégration pour préparer ces examens. Et aussi, on a des témoignages des gens qui ont réussi brillamment ces examens. Et une fois qu'ils commencent leur stage qu'on appelle le résidanat, on les met à la porte en disant vous n'avez pas les connaissances. Et pourtant, ce sont des gens qui ont été formés en Europe, aux États-Unis ou ailleurs. On se rend compte qu'il y a vraiment une injustice, une discrimination, un racisme. Des patrons qui leur disent « Retournez dans votre pays, on n'a pas besoin de vous ». Il y a des gens qui le disent. Mais je pense que ce n'est pas nous contre les autres. Ce qu'on pourrait faire, c'est de motiver, disons, la politique de motivation de ces gens. Donc, la carotte et le bâton en leur disant « Vous, les médecins canadiens qui sont ici, on met sur la table un financement pour assurer l'encadrement de ces gens. » Une fois que vous arrivez à sortir un médecin diplômé à l'étranger, vous avez une prime de motivation. Donc, une façon que ça soit gagnant-gagnant. On l'a vu avec la pandémie de COVID-19. Dans les CHSLD, il y a eu un manque criant de personnel. Et pourtant, il y a des gens qui sont prêts à aller aider. Donc, je pense qu'il y a du travail à faire de ce côté-là.
Excellent. And for those, unfortunately, we didn't have a translation for that, but I'll just get right to the nub. Thierry indicated that perhaps a solution for the recognition of foreign credentials, especially in things like medicine, is for the federal government to use a combination of a carrot and stick approach, and that the part of the carrot is providing money to the different colleges that the professional organizations that regulate the admission of doctors or whatever profession that they might be, to say, all right, when new people come to this country with competencies and in the field that you're regulating, that here's some money to help better bring them into the system. And I guess the stick part of it, of course, is if they don't, then we need to stop using those professional associations to be the arbiters of who gets to be in the club and who gets to be outside of the club. One last comment from Kemo, I'm assuming on this issue, and then we'll have to end it there, folks, to go on to the second panel.
Yeah, actually, it's on the previous it talks about capital.
If you could just bring the microphone just a little closer to your mouth there, please.
Yeah.
That little thick part on the wire, just bring that a little closer to your mouth.
Okay. Oh, the pad here.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was just going to talk about the previous talk on the capital cost being included in the funding model. Like the African Center, we have a daycare, but because we have struggles in having capital, having our own building, we've been moving from place to place, and that has been a challenge to actually house our daycare that we particularly own. And getting funding from the city, which has been a partner and have been supporting, has been stalled because of the downturn of the economic in Alberta, which has impeded furtherance. And I think to that point is probably adding that capital cost in any funding model will help in terms of things like that.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Merci beaucoup à vous tous de vos présentations puis les questions que vous avez posées. Thank you for your participation here and the questions that you asked. We're going to take 2 minutes. We'll reconvene at 2:45 for the next panel. I'll give you a heads up as to who's on that next panel. We'll have representatives from Legal Aid Ontario, from representatives from CPAD, from the Toronto Black Farmers and Growers Collective, the 3R International, Ulu Global Incorporated, Africa Trade Desk, the Nigerian Canadian Association of Ottawa, BSAM Canada Institute, Ottawa Venues, and Black Women United Edmonton, or YEG. So with that, we will take a 2-minute break. We'll be back at 2:46. For those who are going to be participating on the next panel, please take advantage of this time to get yourself a headset with microphone or earbuds with microphone, and please make sure that your audio is properly selected on the Zoom features, on the Zoom parameters, les paramètres, settings, the Zoom settings below, and we'll start up for some questions. Thank you. Hi, folks. Welcome back. All right, let's move to this next panel discussion, and let me congratulate the previous panel. That was a very substantive discussion, and as all our panels have been over the past 2 days. So first off, is David McKillop or Kimberly Roach from Legal Aid Ontario here? I think I see David. So David, just to bring you up to speed, it's a 2-minute, and this is for everyone, it's a 2-minute presentation. At 1 minute, I'll give you the 1 finger up. At 10 seconds to the end, I'll put on the timeout sign to let you know that you have 10 seconds left and please wrap up. And then at some point afterwards, I will intervene verbally. So David McKillop, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Fergus.
Just Greg is fine.
Okay, thank you, Greg. All I'm going to say is that I'm going to turn the floor over to Kim Roach to use the 2 minutes. She is the expert on staff at Legal Aid Ontario and is responsible for the submission that we put in to the caucus. So I'd like to turn it over to Kim.
Perfect.
Thank you, David. Can everyone hear me?
I think for translation, is that okay? Can you talk for just a few seconds there, Kimberly?
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity, of course, to participate.
If you could just bring the microphone just a little closer to your mouth, that would be great.
Is this better?
A lot closer, apparently.
Okay. Any better?
Again, I'm sorry to do this, folks. It's very important so that the translators can hear this. If I could ask you to please, I'm just going to look at the screen here. It's not a bendable microphone.
It's not a bendable microphone. I can see if I can raise the volume.
Is that better? Yeah, so yep, it's good. We're getting the thumbs up.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
So I just wanted to start off by saying that Legal Aid Ontario is a funder and provider of legal services for low-income Ontarians. Black and racialized communities are overrepresented among Ontario's low-income population and represent 32% of our clients. Over the last 3 years, LAO, Legal Aid Ontario, through its racialized community strategy, has held extensive consultations with Black and racialized communities, which were focused on identifying legal needs and addressing barriers to accessing justice and legal aid services. These consultations inform our submissions today. The Black community is overrepresented at all levels of the justice system. In order to address the overrepresentation, we would like to request that funding be provided to initiatives that are aimed at diverting individuals out of the criminal justice system, such as the provision of long-term funding for legal services to Black students facing suspensions or expulsions in order to address the schools to prisons pipeline. Additionally, funding for legal representation in minor criminal matters for Black accused with no criminal records in order to ensure that they don't get a criminal record. Currently, to be eligible for legal aid services, an accused must be facing jail time, which means that those who face minor charges can't access our services. And we all know that the creation of a criminal record can pose significant barriers later on for individuals. Additionally, we would recommend funding for initiatives that are aimed at providing legal services, mental health supports, education, and training for incarcerated individuals to prepare them for release and to reduce the rates of recidivism. Specifically funding for legal advice and representation of Black inmates to ensure fair treatment while in correctional facilities. We've heard that Black offenders who display behaviors that are often attributed to mental health issues and white offenders are often punished instead of being referred to mental health services. This can result in institutional charges, which increases the length of their sentence. The final recommendation that we have is that you provide funding for initiatives such as a Child Protection Center to provide advice, representation for Black, racialized, and Indigenous families who come into contact with the child welfare system to avoid the crossover use phenomena that we see.
Thank you very much. That was very substantive. I really appreciate that, Kimberly. Excellent. Can't wait to get to the questions and answers. Next, for CPAD, for the Canadian Institute for People of African Descent, I'd like to invite Charles Shepard or Noah Bokier-Yadom.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Noah.
Okay, and I think I've had to rush and find a microphone, and it's broken, and I have taped it to my head just for this, just for this while.
Well, that's a good one, and you know, we've all been there. So thank you for doing so. Actually, it really is helpful to our translators for you to have a microphone that is close to the mouth. So thank you for making the effort, and I hope removing the tape won't be too painful.
Thank you. I won't stand up for anybody to see the back of my head to see the tape. So we'll just keep still for now. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Greg, and thank you everyone for being on the call. My name is Noah Bokier-Yadom. Charles is my co-chair for the Usheri Council, a group of strong-minded, strong-willed Black Canadians across the country brought together to shepherd the federal government's call to do a feasibility study on the need for a Canadian Institute for People of African Descent, a response to the United Nations Decade of People of African Descent. The feasibility study was completed and submitted to the Minister Hussein's office, the ESDC, I believe. There's a lot of acronyms going around, so I promise not, if I get it wrong, they will forgive me. And the response has been quite phenomenal. So what we are hoping for and asking for is a strong response to ensure that the Black Caucus supports whichever office needs to be supported to fund the creation of an institute for people of African descent to look at the social determinants of health. So we're not looking for an institute to just look at the economic aspect. We're not looking for an institute to look at just the healthcare system and our dealings and anti-racial responses, but rather all aspects that affect our health, from education to our gender issues. So that's the focus of CPAD, and the response has been phenomenal from the community that this is a needed initiative, and the Usheri Council is looking to ensure that we hold the government to account to ensure that the funding is provided for the institute to be created, which will be national in nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you very much. And I can tell you that throughout the last 2 days, many people have mentioned their support of CPAD's funding. So there has been a lot of support. I'd like now, if Jacqueline Dwyer is on the line, or Noel Livingston, to talk about the Toronto Black Farmers and Growers Collective. Okay, seeing none. Darlene Lozis, je pense que je l'ai vue sur le... oui, voilà, elle est sur l'écran. Darlene, pour représenter 3R International. La parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Greg, et j'en profite pour saluer toutes les personnes qui sont là. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez bien.
Si vous pouvez juste approcher le micro de votre bouche, s'il vous plaît.
C'est ce que je pensais faire. Est-ce que ça marche maintenant?
Ça, c'est beaucoup mieux. Merci.
OK. Donc, je vais aller rapidement parce que Kimberly a déjà mentionné plusieurs de nos préoccupations et de ce qu'on aimerait voir dans le budget. Il y a la formation continue délivrée par des personnes racialisées et je pèse mes mots pour dire qui vont être donnés par des personnes racialisées pour préparer les jeunes dans leur pré-insertion. parce que l'un des problèmes qu'on a remarqué au niveau provincial, c'est que les portes de ces institutions sont ouvertes uniquement aux personnes qui ont une prédominance religieuse, alors que beaucoup de ces jeunes-là, justement, ont un problème identitaire et refusent de s'identifier totalement à une religion quelconque. Et certains cherchent aussi une connexion avec eux-mêmes, avec leur identité, je dirais, culturelle. L'autre chose, c'est de supporter les parents racialisés qui sont obligés de supporter leurs enfants mineurs dans le système. Et quand je dis ça, c'est parce que plein de ces parents n'ont pas non seulement le côté financier, donc devraient avoir un moyen de les supporter, et aussi de supporter des programmes bilingues, parce que la langue française est carrément mise sur les bancs. Et finalement, supporter financièrement les petits organismes sociaux qui ont l'expertise, mais qui ont de la difficulté à maintenir leurs services de réinsertion et leurs services de suivi. Parce que le jeune, ça ne suffit pas seulement qu'il laisse les institutions, mais c'est de faire en sorte qu'ils ont des services qui les permettent de rester dans la communauté et de aussi donner de leur capacité dans leur communauté respective. Donc, lorsqu'on parle de réinsertion, on voit aussi tout cet élément socioculturel qui maintient le jeune dans la communauté, qui deviennent responsables aussi des actes individuels et collectifs. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Darlene. Puis avant que vous partiez, j'aimerais juste chercher une petite précision pour votre deuxième recommandation avec supporter les parents racialisés. Est-ce que c'est forcément les parents dans la définition anglaise, ou est-ce que c'est les parents dans la définition plutôt francophone, ou est-ce que c'est non seulement les mères et pères, mais aussi de la parenté?
En fait, la parenté, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de fois des incidences, les parents qui n'ont pas beaucoup de financement, qui n'ont pas l'argent, qui n'ont pas d'emploi, qui ont des difficultés, mettent toute leur énergie sur ces jeunes-là, même s'il y a l'aide juridique qui se donne pour certains parents, mais il y a des parents qui travaillent, mais qui ont un faible revenu et qui doivent tenir compte et prendre soin de leurs enfants. Il y a des incitatifs qui sont là, mais il y en a plus, il y a un moyen de faire. Et c'est ça qu'on aimerait aussi proposer au gouvernement.
C'est beau. On va avoir la discussion de parler un peu plus long. Do we have someone who represents Ubuntu, Ulu Global Inc.? Would that be Hidia? There they are. Okay.
How are you?
Very well. Please, if you could just bring the microphone just slightly closer to your mouth, and that would be great.
Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here with my brother Lita. We're both co-founders of Ulu. From our inception, Ulu has worked to improve race relations across communities by creating awareness through education about racism, its history in the Canadian and international context, as well as the impacts on Black communities. Our goal is to work to mobilize and engage Black communities through educational initiatives, as well as supports for parents. Currently, we are working with the Greater Sudbury Police. I should have told you we're situated in Sudbury, Ontario, which is the fastest growing city in Northern Ontario for the Black population. Due to job gaps in the city, there are many West African and Caribbean families coming to live in the city of Sudbury. So we've been working very closely with the city to improve the quality of life, as well as looking at the social determinants of health and how it impacts Black people. One of our asks incorporates all of our asks, actually, is investing into the neighborhood and the community through educational supports programs that involve tutoring, homework help, educational navigation for families, as well as extracurricular opportunities within sports, arts, and just cultural activities that incorporate the Northern lifestyle for communities. We are currently working, like I said, with the Greater Sudbury Police, with the Rainbow District Education School Board, with the City of Sudbury, and the public health and districts to fulfill our initiative. So we would really like some support in that area to look at how we can improve the quality of living for our young people and get more and more people to go to post-secondary education, as well as help eliminate some of the systemic racism that they're experiencing within their academic institutions, within their workplaces, as well as in schools and stuff. So, sorry.
Great. You have 10 seconds if you want to just wrap up that last little 10 seconds goes fast. But
you know, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ajay. I really appreciate that. Nice to meet your brother. All right. Give me a second. Africa Trade Desk. Do we have Susan? Susan Namunindwa. Susan, off
Thank
to you.
you. Hi. The Africa Trade Desk, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a historic agreement, the largest in the world by the size, geographical size, and potential. Canada has been an honest broker, having provided funds through the UN trade policy for the drafting of this agreement, entered into by all the 55 member states and coming into effect on January 1st, 2021. As Canada, we must remain partners for the implementation. Africans want trade and inclusion, not exclusion, which has been a case for so long. Dignified two-way trade matters, and Canada stands to gain tremendously with an export market of 1.3 billion people and hundreds of thousands of jobs created right here as a result. As Africa Trade Desk and the Canada Chamber of Business, we believe from the experience at the AU Extraordinary Summit last year that Canada is a preferred partner. There's no reason why Canada cannot be the first nation to enter a trade deal with a single African market at a time where trade diversification matters for Canadian businesses more than ever. Canadian businesses, especially the ones for marginalized Black businesses and the African diaspora, are uniquely positioned to thrive in a dynamic engine of economic growth, which is home to 5 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. We are recommending $1.5 million to put together a team focused full-time on extending Canada's role as an honest broker, facilitating support for the trade area as a G7 nation that recognizes Africa as an equal in action, not only in word. The next priority is to highlight the opportunities that are available for Canadian businesses to seize as this market expands. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Susan. Fascinating presentation as well for the opportunities that it presents to us.
Located in the Spadina-Fort York area, but serves Canada at large, and we're located in the Greater Toronto area. It focuses on 5 areas of inquiry to support and connect interests in health and wellness, critical literacy, $1,000.
Excellent. Thank you very much for bringing that together under 2 minutes. I'm sure we're going to get back to you on that question on the cultural aspect. It's come up at other presentations, other panels since we started this. I'd like to turn to David Crawford from Ottawa Venues. David. We're almost there. Get that mute off. Bottom left-hand corner.
Okay, sorry. Good afternoon, all. Thank you. Greg, I don't hold
the mic just a little bit above, somewhere between. Perfect.
Greg, I don't hold this against me, but I'm of descent in any case. Those of you who've worked with Caucus has been to present and create positive, inclusive events. Being said, this being 2020, it's going to be very difficult. She's done amazing things, and it's her turn now.
When it comes time to promoting the show, because again, by the grace of God, we've been really successful with the different initiatives both David and I have done separately, and we're excited to work together on this. It's also regarding engagement as a young person.
Very briefly, please.
No problem. Regarding engagement, we also have a formula for that. Our budget is $45,000 for this. And again, we want to extend the knowledge of Canadian Black history because we recognize the importance of Canadians knowing about Canadian Black history. All Canadians.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much. And from United, which is, I'm assuming means Edmonton.
Black Women United GAG, which is Edmonton. I'm also
here with Janetta. That's right.
Yeah. Also Black Canadian from multiple different communities. So I had family come up through the Underground Railroad, and as well I had family that settled.
Get up on our Black history. So in regards to Black Women United, we are an advocacy that's all about the protection and advancement of Black women and girls, and nonprofit, which is the Velma Carter Center for African Canadian Women. She is a Western icon. We have identified 4 key areas that have been proven to change the trajectory of a Black woman's life here in this province for 130 years. 2 are external to the Black community: workplace racism, discrimination, and internal domestic violence and sexual abuse and exploitation. Our recommendation or our ask is that there would be dedicated funding to Black women-led organizations, and there are several others across Canada, like Women at the Center, Canadian Women's Foundation, Battered Women's Support Services, that we've been working in strategy with. And what we find is that when it comes to funding, programming funding we can come by. It's harder in Alberta because of our political climate, okay? It's different province to province, and we're in the belly of the beast. And operational funding, a lot of funding that's available has a caveat of doesn't allow operational, or it's minimal. And we're also stuck in the perennial cycle of pilot projects. Everything's a pilot project. Well, you can't build that way. So essentially, that's what we are interested in seeing made available, and to deal specifically with gender-based violence as Black women uniquely experience it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janetta. Thank you very much, Lisa. Do appreciate you raising that very important issue, especially in the context where it happens. I didn't mention them at the front end, and because this is my problem, my error. The BC CEP Windsor is Abiola Afolabi on the call, and would she like to make her presentation here? I think Abiola, I think I see you here, but I don't know if you're able to mute your microphone, and I feel a little guilty because I didn't mention you at the front end. All right, so she might be doing something else. That's not her problem, that's me. That's on me, and we'll certainly have her appear in the next panel. So with that, folks, we are open to questions. Comment cela va fonctionner? C'est qu'on va demander aux parlementaires de vous poser des questions. Les parlementaires savent comment utiliser la fonction de main levée. Alors, j'encourage les parlementaires à lever les mains s'ils ont des questions à poser à nos témoins ici. Et deuxièmement, par après, durant les questions, on va inviter les participants à poser des questions aussi. De cette façon-là, on s'assure qu'on va avoir des informations qu'on a besoin, et puis après ça, on peut avoir une discussion générale. Nous avons une autre 20 à 25 minutes. Alors, je vais demander à Chandra Arya à poser la première question, et puis après ça, j'en ai quelques-uns.
Thanks, Greg. My question is to the Africa desk, Susan. Susan, in your written submission, you say that the government implement a trade agreement with Africa in the light of African continental free trade area. When you say implement, you assume that we have an agreement. As far as my knowledge goes, I don't think we have a free trade agreement with African Union yet?
That is correct. So the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is just coming into effect January 1st. Canada was instrumental in setting that up. So with the interaction between the Africa Trade Desk and the Canada Africa Chamber of Business, we are going to be having quarterly meetings with Secretary General of the Africa Continental Trade Area, Honorable Mene. So it was an error in my submission. So we want to facilitate that agreement because no country has yet made that agreement. There are talks from different countries out of the EU. We just want to position Canada to be at the forefront in view of the Prime Minister's visit last. It seems like a long time ago, but yeah, it was only earlier this year. So we have been working with Minister Ng, and the chamber has an actual memorandum of understanding with the AU. So that's why we want to really fast track this agreement so Canada is at the forefront.
Yeah, thanks. I'm on International Trade Committee.
Yes.
Anytime you need any assistance, please do get in touch with me.
Oh, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. I'm done.
Thank you. My question would be for Legal Aid Ontario, and I think it was, and forgive me, I think it was Kimberly who had made the presentation. Maybe
yes.
Oh, good. I got the name right. A few, just going by memory. Kimberly, I want to ask you the question in regards to your first recommendation. You pointed out, and I love these meetings because I get to learn a lot. One of the things that you'd mentioned was that you are seeking to provide legal representation in minor criminal matters for Black accused with no criminal record. And you had explained how there is no funding right now for legal aid for those folks. Can you please speak a little bit more at length on this issue so that we can make sure that we capture that?
Okay, so Legal Aid Ontario has two components to eligibility, financial eligibility and what we call legal eligibility. The test for legal eligibility is a risk to liberty test. And what that means is that someone has to be at risk of getting a prison sentence, and a sentence that would be usually that would be of more than 6 months. You have indictable offenses and summary offenses. So it has to be a more serious charge that has the possibility of them serving jail time. So for a lot of minor issues, such as, let's say, theft under 5,000, the possible sentence would be less than 6 months. Oftentimes, the person may not be subjected to jail time. But what happens is that if they're convicted or they plea, they enter into a plea agreement, they receive a record. And for members of the Black community who are already over-scrutinized, that record basically limits their potential and their ability to, one, for a young person, complete certain requirements in education. In Ontario, you have to do volunteer hours, for example. Oftentimes, organizations that you would volunteer with do a criminal record check or a vulnerable sector check, so that those kids would then be excluded from that, or those young people would then be excluded from that. I know of circumstances where people have gone into college programs, so they may have had one mistake. They've now they're attempting to complete college courses. But again, a component of that is a practicum, and they have to do a vulnerable sector check. They're not able to pass that, so they can't complete that. It also impacts their ability to get other jobs. For example, the City of Toronto, many of their jobs, and I know that they were looking at changing this, many of their jobs require that you don't have a criminal record. You have to pass that. So again, the Black community, which already faces discrimination in employment, is, they're further limited by the criminal record, even with organizations that would more likely be open to employing them, like the city, for example.
Perfect. This is good. Est-ce que j'ai une question à poser à Darlene Lozis qui il y a un lien entre ces deux, la question que je viens de poser. Darlene, pensez-vous qu'on a assez de programmes qui agitent comme une bretelle de sortie pour les jeunes noirs qui sont traduits devant la justice ou avant qu'ils soient traduits dans la justice? Est-ce qu'on a des programmes qui est à sa base communautaire pour accueillir ces gens-là, pour leur offrir une deuxième, troisième chance? Vous êtes en sourdine.
Sorry. My answer would be no. On n'en a pas. Et on en a, mais on n'en a pas beaucoup. Je dois spécifier. Et c'est là le problème. Un des problèmes que nous rencontrons, que nous voyons dans les communautés racialisées, et quand je dis racialisées, je parle des personnes noires et autochtones, c'est qu'il y a très peu de programmes qui durent dans le temps pour prévenir et aussi pour faire la suite, pendant et après. Et c'est quelque chose qu'on a essayé à maintes reprises de militer là-dessus. Il faut plus de ces programmes-là pour aider ces jeunes à s'en sortir. Parce qu'un programme pour aider à la réinsertion, un programme pour aider aussi à l'intérieur des murs, pour permettre aux jeunes de comprendre leur situation socio-économique, de comprendre leur situation dans le système judiciaire, pourrait éventuellement aider à atténuer les problèmes que nous rencontrons. Et aussi, il faut des programmes qui font des liens avec les forces de l'ordre et également avec les communautés. Parce que s'il n'y a pas de lien, donc on va toujours avoir à gérer le profilage racial que l'on est obligé tout le temps de faire. Et des programmes aussi parce que ce qui se passe avec le système, on a des programmes de courte durée qui ne s'éteignent, qui ne durent pas dans le temps. Et c'est ce qu'il faut aussi. Des programmes qui permettent à ces jeunes-là non seulement de travailler sur leur identité, mais de travailler sur les ressources aussi socio-économiques qu'ils pourraient avoir éventuellement pour s'en sortir. Il ne faut pas se mentir, la majorité de ces jeunes-là sont des jeunes qui sont issus de familles à faible revenu. Ce n'est pas un stéréotype, c'est une réalité. Et ça, il faut des programmes pour pouvoir les prendre en charge. On ne veut pas avoir à guérir le mal après. On veut aussi prévenir ce fléau-là. Et ces programmes doivent avoir un lien avec les institutions éducatives, les écoles. Donc, il faut voir dans son ensemble les programmes qui sont mis en branle, comment on peut les supporter, parce que beaucoup de ces programmes peuvent amener justement à l'atténuation des problèmes que nous avons avec le milieu carcéral et judiciaire.
Merci, Darlene. And my last question before I pass the microphone over to Adam Vaughn and then others is to Hedja and her brother. In regards to what you've noticed in Sudbury, Hedja, and you talked about the opportunities to provide that kind of guidance, which is it's a different aspect, but again, it comes back to the different aspect than what Darlene was talking about. But it does talk about the importance of having a community, in a Black community, in which to mentor, to guide, to envelope young people, to provide them that type of mentorship. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit further about how important that is, even in communities in Sudbury or other communities. I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Of course I was, sorry. I apologize. To just echo what Darlene was saying, I think one of the important things to note is for us, when we developed Ulu, Lita, myself, and another one of our colleagues, Kadre, we were all students in the city of Sudbury. So coming to the city now, so a city like Sudbury is about 10 years behind a city like Toronto.
Which is where you came from, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I'm from Toronto. Yes, from Regent Park, Toronto. So there's very limited programming here for young people, but also for families who are newcomers here. For the Black community, there isn't much programming. So when we developed Ulu, it was really to support, to empower, and to mobilize the Black community. There's a lot of systemic racism. There's everywhere, but here in Northern Ontario, it's really very much in your face. It's very overt. The idea behind the work that we were doing was to develop programming to teach young people about their rich culture, about their rich history, and to celebrate diversity amongst the Black community, because just in our own community, there's a lot of diversity. There's Caribbean people, there are Africans, West African, East African, we're all from different places, but to celebrate our diversity and to learn about our history, as well as the impacts that colonization has had, and that slavery did exist in Canada. So having those programming has been very empowering for the Black community here specifically, because we're talking about things that we haven't been talking about. We're discussing the historical context, things that you are not being taught at elementary school and high school, even in the post-secondary institution. The work that we do is very research. It's driven by research that's been done. I am currently doing my master's. Actually, Dr. Carl James is one of my thesis supervisors, and also working with Dr. Janelle Joseph at the University of Toronto. Importance of the programming is that it's similar to what Darlene was saying. We need to be proactive and not reactive. And I think when we have programming where we're teaching young kids from a young age, and also working with families. So I hear a lot of people working with children and youth, and some people working with families. But I think when we're looking at the Black community, we need to encompass all of it, because we're very family orientated. It's whatever the family dynamic looks like, it's still family orientated, whether that's your extended family and community driven. The community that I grew up in, families work together to raise the community because they're single parent homes. My mom worked all the time. So, you know, all my aunties in the neighborhood helped raise me and get me to where I am. So the importance of programming is that we also bring the Black community together, and that we help the young people feel empowered to be able to pursue education. Providing supports like educational supports is something that we talked about. The reason why we said that was important is because I believe somebody on the discussion talked about the lack of resources for Black, I believe it was Kimberly actually, when we're talking about young Black men being incarcerated in Ontario, there's a 7-to-1 ratio for Black and Indigenous men being incarcerated to white men. Where does that come from? What can we look at when we're looking at reality? Why is that's happening, other than the fact that we're built on systemic racism here in Canada? But what can we do to prevent that? And I think educational supports is important, because oftentimes our kids get streamlined. They get streamlined into vocation and into trades, and not able to pursue families to be able to do that. So I think that programming is important because it encompasses all of those things in together. So
perfect. Thank you. That's a very good points and good connections. Adam Vaughn, and then we have questions amongst our participants. Adam.
Yeah, on the question of legal aid support, in particular for minor offenses, which quite often end up being stacked and have impact much later in life, and as identified impact.
When you mean stacked, you mean a whole bunch of them put together to make a longer sentence?
Yeah, I mean it's the old phrase that gets repeated often: "No one to police." But it's a result of this sort of systemic stacking of minor charges to trip into bigger charges later. The proposal around legal aid, is it? Are you working within the certificate system or within the clinic system when you describe the opportunity that you want to pursue with funding? Sorry, Kimberly, you're on mute still.
So I think that there is to look at it. I think that what we've tried to do with the schools to prisons pipeline and representation is work with the Black community and organizations that are Black led. What RCS, the Racialized Community Strategy, would like to do is to develop capacity as well in terms of representation within the Black community. So I think that there's a possibility of working within the new legislation, LASSA 2020, to look at how to deliver this type of service. It's not something that is specific to the certificate bar, but at this point, most clinics don't have the mechanism to provide that kind of representation. But I do think that it's possible to work to build a system that looks at embedding a response within the community. So working with clinics as well as the certificate side, and also looking at how we build a diverse legal bar.
Okay. So in terms of, sorry, just trying to figure out where to fit this into a federal funding sort of budget or funding streams. So would it be to set up a center of legal excellence to provide that advice as opposed to funding a certificate program or funding a clinic?
I think that what would be helpful is to provide the funding and allow legal aid to make a solution for each community, because what something looks like in Toronto would be much different from what it would look like in London, for example, or Sudbury, where we have most of the clinic system that we would work with, for example, Black, which is the Black Legal Action Center. That's located primarily in Toronto, although it's mandated to do work throughout the province. But there might be the need to have a certificate side to represent, to do representation in areas such as Sudbury or more rural areas, whereas there might be systems that are set up already in Durham, for example, Toronto and Ottawa.
So I'm going to just interrupt there because I see that Rochelle Ignacio has her hand up, and Rochelle was also a person who, Rochelle, are you there? Did you want to make a presentation regarding La Connexiale and Black-owned market?
Yeah.
Oops, oh, I see. I see.
Abiola is ready.
Is your, can you bring the microphone closer? Peux-tu faire approcher le micro à votre bouche, s'il vous plaît? OK, on peut pas vous entendre. Je pense qu'il y a un problème avec la connexion. I think there's a problem with the connection.
Abiola Falabi is ready here. Abiola Falabi.
Abiola, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Are you part of the same organization? Sorry?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I didn't thought that. Okay. You know what, Rochelle, we're going to put you on to the next panel. And if you could see if you could find alternative connection, because we're really not hearing you at all. Dr. Critchlow.
Thank you for Greg. It was more of a question and a comment for legal aid. One of the issues that concern me is that as we talk about redirecting resources or supporting programs, the prison pipeline is, I think it's a misused concept. It didn't, the problems did not start in the school. The problems started long before kids entered decrepit classrooms. So I think we need to be more cautious of how we use that term, the school to prison pipeline, as though the problems are not structurally embedded in society and in ways that fosters decrepit schools and classrooms. So we need to look at going back, I think, some more in terms of what are the structural issues in communities in which we don't have organized programs, organized support programs. And one of the issues raised here is around programming and long-term meaningful programming for youth to engage in. I'll be cautious of how we talk about the school to prison pipeline. And my last point is the legal clinic is also a clinic, I think, is trying to do this work. Are you doing any work jointly with the Black Legal Clinic to address these issues?
Black Legal Clinic, sorry, just because your internet connection was also
Black Legal Clinic, yeah.
Okay. Before we go to that, I'm just going to ask, I'm going to have the 3 questions asked because we're running up against time. So Amicly Fontaine, I think you have a question that you want to ask. Amicly, you have your hand up. All right.
C'est pas une question.
Oh bon, c'est pas une question, c'est un commentaire. Allez-y.
Non, c'est parce que donc je suis là, mais je ne suis pas appelé, donc pour passer sur le panel.
Excuse-moi, Amicly, donnez-moi juste un instant. Vous représentez quel organisme?
Fondation Sylvain Lindor.
Ah oui, on vous a demandé pour être là dans le... on va procéder, on va vous revenir dans la prochaine étape. Est-ce que ça c'est correct? Avez-vous du temps pour rester ici?
Oui, aucun problème.
C'est beau, on va faire ça dans quelques minutes.
OK, merci.
Kamoa, would you like to ask a question or make a comment? Comment? Mansouré? Ah, oui.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. The Africa Center has been working as being a hub. Being a hub has been working on having a complex that actually would bring all the major African organizations in one place, because we are using resources a lot to rent from other people rather than actually bringing all these resources together and empowering ourselves economically, as well as having that hub wherein we can be able to share knowledge within a particular hub. Most times we are going to other organizations and other institutions to have some of our programs being run. So bringing all collating. So we have a schematic design that was prepared and presented to City Council, and City Council actually funded part of it, and because of the economic downturn, they have suspended that to 2023 before they can revisit that. So some of our ask is that if the federal government can actually help with some of these projects that is already on the way, that we can actually continue to do, so that we can build the hub that we need for Africans in Edmonton and Alberta in generally. Sharif?
Yeah, sorry. Basically, this that Kimo, you nailed down. What we are asking is that existing capital fundings that are available within the federal government be availed to municipalities to be a partner in that, so that we can have this major infrastructure that has been completed schematically. The idea is not only to provide services, but also to demonstrate a cultural center that will address some of the systemic issues that we experience. Quite a number of cultural facilities are available, but not culturally oriented with the lenses of African traditions and cultures in the same way that is portrayed in others. So basically what they ask is if the federal government to consider capital funding that is available, and this could be done in partnership with the municipality. We have the land, we have done quite an extensive work for about 3 years, and we can have a further discussion on that on the question period.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Sharif, and thank you for the previous question. And we have just one more question, and actually 2 more questions. One from continuing along the cultural line. So CC, do you want to ask a question or make a point? And then I have one question for BSAM Canada.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to make a point. It's along the lines of the programming. And this is something that we actually recognize with Impact Black Global. Not too many, I don't know if people on the call are familiar with our organization, but we won't get into that. One of the things that we recognize, first and foremost, you guys mentioned prevention, programs that prevent. One of the things that people need to also recognize and realize is the reason why many of the youth get involved in certain activities. Oftentimes, if you look at their influences, many youth don't really have influences within their own personal communities, within their own particular communities. So who do they look to? They look to the person like a rapper or someone in the media. We're in a very prevalent social media generation. They look on social media. I'm a young person. I see a lot of social media influences, and those influences are very enticing. They have the cars, they have the money, and oftentimes they're attaining these things not just through music but through other means. So we need to have better influences for these young people. Number one, we also talked about programs disappearing here on just not too long ago. Well, I've been working in the community for so many years, and I recognize that issue of programs disappearing. But the reason why a lot of these programs are disappearing, if you talk to these youth, because that's the main thing, we're servicing the youth. If you talk to these youth, what are they going to say? A lot of these programs are boring. And that's the honest truth. I was part of these programs, and I can say that I've experienced a lot of boring programs. So a lot of these programs need to be engaging. The reason why I'm saying that is because when creating these programs, we need to stop looking from the lens of, okay, what do we think that they need, and what do we think, and how should we serve them? We have to think from, how would they like for us to serve them? We have to get down to their level, and we need to understand how they see things through their lens and through their eyes.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that that's one of the things that at Impact Black Global, and that's one of the things that's helped us become so successful, because all of everyone on my core team, they're young people, and we've been able to captivate and engage these young people because we've seen it from their perspective and from their lens, and we've gotten down to their level. We've gotten help from people who are above us, but yeah. Sorry.
Perfect. I think we got the point. The user-defined programming, which is really key. Just one last question for BSAM Canada Institute. You had mentioned that although we don't have the numbers, the Black community, and especially in the cultural and the art scene, has been disproportionately affected. I was wondering if you could give us just a brief example, a story that you could tell about the effect of COVID on Black artists.
So as a Black artist, we already were struggling to get into like various organizations and gallery spaces. It was exponentially became increasingly harder for us to get work, because we're basing our work off of being able to do exhibits, even if we're transforming places that are inclusive of Black artists. So having everything shut down and not having spaces to present our work in general has impacted Black artists specifically. And access to funding as well. I think there was like a study done specifically by Toronto Arts Council about how to form grants to support Black artists, but there needs to be like a larger conversation with Black artists across Canada regarding supports that are needed, and how do we reclaim spaces where we're in particular excluded.
Thank you. Folks, this brings us to the end of this panel. We're going to move to the next panel after a 2-minute break. I'm going to repeat some things that first of all, let me thank you all for exciting presentations which you made, and it's very useful. If there are additional information that you think that we should consider, please do not hesitate to send it to us. We will make sure that it gets incorporated into our report. So anything at all. When we go into the next panel after a 2-minute break, if I could ask the people who are going to be presenting to please make sure that you could try to find a headset with a microphone, and if you could plug it in and test the parameters, the set audio settings, so that we could make it easier on our translation, our people who provide interpretation rather, to making sure that they can hear us clearly. The next group will be next groups coming forward would be the Mosiah Women's Network Society, Youth Leaps, the Council for the Advancement of African Canadians in Alberta. I think we already had. Sorry, Kemo, did you already present? If not, you'll be there. Then there'll be the Bureau International d'Études pour la Paix et le Développement. There'll be the Ben's Service Communautaire de Santé, TKB Consulting, the I think we might have, I'll say it in the Vaughan African Canadian Association, and ANCHOR, that's the African Canadian National Coalition Against Hate, Oppression, and Racism. Then there'll be Equal Chance. Then there'll be Global African Congress. Then we have Blue Lunar, Council of African Canadians in Alberta. Sorry, I just said that earlier. So forgive me that we repeated that twice. There is a BC CEEP Windsor, and then La Fondation Lindor. And if there's anyone we've forgotten, a space for you, just signal me when we start up again. So we'll in 2 minutes. All right, folks, thank you very much for your patience, and we're going to be starting up on our last of 3 panels coming up. I have to say it's been an extraordinary number of presentations that we've had. Extraordinary high quality presentations that have really given us a sense of what's happening.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Greg.
Please.
Thank
Glad
you.
to have you.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Thank you so much. It was ironic the call just dropped. But yes, I would say God is good. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The Black Caucus, we truly appreciate being here. Now, as an organization, Mosiah's Women's Network Society, our goal is really to empower the African, Canadian, and Caribbean community, children, youth, and seniors. And when I created the 3 key areas that we would like to look at in reference to the pre-benefits, it was not just for our organization. I'm sure you looked at the numbers, this lady's out of her mind. But
no, it looked national.
Okay, yes, thank you. Because our goal is overall is to collaborate. We felt there's a need that we need to collaborate now, and now is the best time to collaborate. We see that our community has been beaten up on, broken, and we're downtrodden. Most of us don't like to hear those terms, but it's the fact. So as we get these opportunities, best we can collaborate with each other and work together, because most of us are looking at the same program somewhat. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, just 1 minute that was a 1 minute signal.
Oh, thank you. So the 3 areas that we looked at was proper infrastructure for training for staff. We think we need that. An incubator for Black nonprofit organizations and charities to be able to build social enterprise for sustainability of their programs and reduce the need for grant monies. We would like to also see youth development and an incubator programs, as well as women development of programs and micro grants, along with loans for small businesses needing support. Our seniors are also important to us because they're shut in, and we see that they need to also have an interaction with our communities. And it's our goal to create programs for them, as well as they're there as a source. They're the foundation. They're the knowledge channel, and we need to get them involved, because not because they're over a certain age, it means that they're no part of the communities. We need to get them back and get them involved in what we're doing. Also, when it comes to our history, we forget where we're coming from. We want to see our history being told, not from today, but before. When we think about Africville, we need to bring back the minds as to where we were coming from and where we are going. And we also want to encourage just the collaboration of communities.
Thank you very much, Faith. I really do appreciate that. I'm sorry to keep us to the time is our enemy here. So the next three proposals or presentations, first will be from Youth Leaps, then there'll be the Council for Advancement for African Canadians in Alberta, and then le Bureau International d'Études pour la Paix et le Développement. Is Lieben here?
Hi, Greg, I'm right here.
Good,
Unfortunately, my camera went off at the inopportune time.
Well,
so you'll have to just,
smaller.
I'll have to resort to my voice alone.
Smaller bandwidth makes it easier for better connection. So
Good.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So optimistically, this government has been committed not only to a strong recovery, but also ensuring Canada builds back better following the pandemic. The Prime Minister said as much when he said the pandemic is an opportunity for a reset, both for our economy, commitment to climate change, and a more just, equitable Canada. While this is like an inspiring proposal, Black people in Canada are more focused on an immediate issue of not being dug down deeper. It's difficult to share this optimism when our Black safety net has been decimated by COVID and the economic downturn. Our communities are in crisis, and the organizations best placed to support them are struggling to survive. A recent needs assessment by the Foundation for Black Communities found that approximately 63% of Black-led, Black-serving organizations will be running out of resources to sustain themselves within the next 6 months. In fact, some of those organizations were here earlier on this call, and some still remain. A corresponding study by Carleton University and the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities found that Black-led organizations are woefully underfunded. The study reported that Black groups received as little as 30 cents for every $100 granted by mainstream philanthropic foundations. This woeful underfunding at a time when our organizations are running out of resources spells their recipe for disaster. We must address this gap if we want to ensure Black communities are able to take part in this, and in what we hope is a plan to build back better. That's why we're calling on the government to make a $200 million investment to capitalize an endowment to support the Foundation for Black Communities, so we can invest in Black-led, Black-serving organizations that are working to support the recovery of Black communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lehman. Just 1 minute, 51 seconds. Thank you that's just perfect. The next three will be the Council for the Advancement for African Canadians in Alberta, le Bureau International d'Études pour Paix et le Développement, and then the Ben's Community and Health Services. So, Kimo or Sharif?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Some of the recommendations we have already touched, but I will just want to emphasize the pieces that I have. Alberta is facing economic difficulties, and this is trickling down to populations that have already been struggling. So the COVID crisis and the way COVID outbreak has been in Alberta creates more challenging. And I'll speak a few things that we have been doing in terms of what can be considered as a recommendation in support of Black populations in the western part of Canada. So the part of the things that we are looking to be a hub. We have been in existence for 14 years, a strong relationship with the municipalities. And we were able to create to a level where we have to build as an infrastructure that costs about 40 million. But at the stage of developmental stage, where we have to do the schematic design, the economic realities in the province changed. And that trickled down to the municipalities, and municipalities are not able to continue that. But what we will consider is that it's an investment, and it's the best investment that could be done, that the federal government take some sort of a lead on this and engage with the Africa Center as well as the City of Edmonton in advancing that infrastructural initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate that, Sharif. I have trouble with getting to the mute myself. All right, the next, le Bureau international d'études pour la paix et le développement. Est-ce qu'on a Alidor Dumbi qui est ici, ou Aaron Sakanda Luntala? Est-ce que un des... OK, on va passer à Franklin Epapé. Franklin, est-ce que vous êtes là?
Oui, Greg, je suis bien là. Bonsoir.
Bon, super, bonsoir. Puis c'est concernant le BENS Community and Health Services.
Oui, alors je vais être très bref. En fait, BENS Service de santé communautaire, c'est la santé que nous mettons l'implication sur notre communauté, la communauté noire. Et puis, le problème que nous avons effectivement eu cette année, comme vous le savez déjà très bien, c'est que nous avons été les gens les plus affectés par le Covid. C'est pour ça qu'on nous appelle les frontliners, parce que la réalité que nous avons dans nos communautés, c'est que nombreux d'entre nous sont
juste un petit peu de ralentir le début un petit peu pour nos interprètes, s'il vous plaît, Franklin.
OK. J'essaie de gagner mes 2 minutes là.
Oui, effectivement.
D'accord. Donc, l'un des problèmes que vous savez que nous avons été très impactés par la COVID-19, notre communauté noire, parce que nous sommes nombreux à être infirmiers et à avoir des préposés aux bénéficiaires. Alors, notre demande, elle est simple. Elle est simple parce que la communauté noire qui a été très impactée, elle est souvent perdue dans tout ce qui est domaine de santé. Nombreux arrivent ici comme infirmiers, nombreux arrivent ici comme préposés aux bénéficiaires.
Franklin, peux-tu juste approcher le micro à ta bouche, à votre bouche, s'il vous plaît?
OK. On m'entend mieux?
Non. Est-ce que vous avez bien choisi? Avez-vous bien choisi sélectionné votre microphone?
Oui, attendez, peut-être je vais me rajouter un petit volume sur...
C'est pas vraiment le volume, c'est juste parce qu'on entend trop de bruit. Alors, je pense que c'est, si vous avez bien choisi, vous savez, juste à côté de l'icône, il y a une flèche. Et après ça, vous pouvez sélectionner les paramètres pour le micro, puis les paramètres pour les haut-parleurs. Alors, si vous pouvez sélectionner le micro qui est comme à votre casque écouteur ou headset.
OK. Je sais pas, je vais essayer ça ici sur... OK. Est-ce qu'on m'entend mieux?
Non, c'est la même qualité du son. Écoute, Franklin, on va vous appeler et puis on va vous revenir, on va vous accorder votre 2 minutes encore, mais quelqu'un de service technique va vous appeler pour prendre des dispositions pour s'arranger.
OK, c'est bon.
If we could now pass to TKB Consulting. Taib Boyce, are you on the call?
Hi, can you hear me?
There you are. Yes, we can hear you, and we can hear you well.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Taib Kounye Boyce. I am the principal consultant for TKB Consulting. I am a political scientist, a social scientist, evaluator by training. I've given workshops on anti-racism and oppression for various government and nonprofit organizations. It just so happens that we're having this conversation on the eve of a training that I'll be giving tomorrow for the Treasury Board Secretariat of Canada, their senior managers. That being said, the reason why I wanted to do this call was to listen to all of of our colleagues here today on what's the needs of Canadians across the country. And I'm learning so much, and it's very impactful for the work that I do as well. The recommendations that I have are specifically related to the Employment Equity Act, and specifically to focus on Black populations in the Act, like they do for people of Aboriginal background and disability and women. Black people need to be focused on in the Employment Equity Act. Currently, there's the public service employees who are Black who are suing the government, and that's not to be lost. And also, I want to mention that in this conversation, only one person that I know of has, Dr. Wesley, has spoken about reparations. I think that this conversation is proactive or very much jumping the gun without having significant recognition from the government in terms of this history of slavery in this country, from BC to Nova Scotia, the burning of Africville. We need to really recognize that this government needs to do more in terms of acknowledging that reparations needs to be priority number one.
Thank you very much. I thought you had said that we were jumping the gun, but now I caught what you meant. So thank you very much. That's really great. Thank you, Taib. I'm wondering if Shernette Martin or Joanne Conan is here from the Vaughan African Canadian Association. Go ahead, Alicia. Is Gwen Madiba here from Equal Chance?
Yes, I'm here.
Marvelous, Gwen. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Thank you very much for organizing this and giving us the chance to share. First, what we would like to suggest is the creation of a targeted mental health services for Black youth at the provincial and national levels in both official languages. These services would be culturally safe and relevant with Afro-descendant professionals. En deuxième lieu, nous suggérons une révision des contenus curriculaires pour combattre les préjugés et les stéréotypes associés aux Noirs et enseigner l'héritage historique et culturel des Afro-Canadiens à tous les niveaux scolaires. Nous suggérons également la création d'un programme ciblé d'orientation professionnelle pour les jeunes adultes noirs pour favoriser la mobilité sociale et économique. En troisième lieu, nous proposons la collecte de données statistiques de l'identité ethno-raciale des citoyens dans tous les ministères gouvernementaux qui offrent des services à notre population pour mieux étudier les questions liées à l'accès aux services. Nous suggérons également la création de postes de recherche postdoctoraux de 2 à 3 ans pour promouvoir la recherche participative et sociocritique avec les communautés noires et l'avancement des connaissances pour concevoir des programmes ciblés efficaces. And we also wanted to, given the rate of low-income homeless Black families, it would be important to continue to invest in social and affordable housing. Lately, we found in Vanier, as we were doing working on our food security program, a building that is home to 21 homeless Black families who are literally stacked 9 people in a 1-bedroom apartment during a pandemic. These people live with cockroaches and rats, and we have alerted the city of Ottawa, who's aware of the situation, and some of them have been living in such conditions for over 2 years. We're really hoping that these families are going to find their forever home very soon. So an investment in social and affordable housing would absolutely be necessary. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Gwen. C'est toujours pertinent, puis on apprécie le fait que vous avez respecté les temps alloués. Alors, I was wondering if we can go back to Franklin et Pape. Je pense qu'on avait réglé notre problème.
Oui, je pense que c'est bon maintenant. Est-ce que les interprètes m'entendent bien?
Est-ce que les interprètes sont corrects avec... Pouvez-vous continuer à parler juste pour une autre 10 secondes, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, effectivement. J'étais en train de parler avec la personne qui m'aidait là, et puis j'ai ajusté le micro. Donc, je pense que je devrais être correct.
On va juste... je cherche un signal de nos interprètes, si c'est correct. Est-ce que... Oh. Est-ce que avez-vous un microphone avec ce...
Oui, oui.
Pouvez-vous approcher le micro tout près de votre bouche?
Oui. Est-ce qu'elles m'entendent? Est-ce que c'est bon là maintenant?
Non, il semble que c'est toujours l'ordinateur qui... le micro de l'ordinateur qui capture le son.
Donc, qu'est-ce que ça fait? Ça fait comme il y a beaucoup d'écho derrière?
Mais c'est ça, il y a trop de... ça prend trop de son, comme je ne sais pas comment l'expliquer, mais c'est pas ciblé comme quand le micro est tout près de votre bouche. On va vous revenir dans un instant.
Oui, c'est correct.
On va vous rappeler encore une fois. The Global African Congress of Nova Scotia chapter, is Lynn Jones here?
Yes, she is. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Hi. Hello,
Hi.
everyone. This is such a wonderful forum. I will go quickly to the points that I have here. And there's three. One relates to reparations. The second is African Nova Scotians as a distinct people. And the third, how funds are dispersed to Black communities across the country. So we've already heard Dr. Wesley Cricklow and my other brother that talked to reparations. So here I am, the third speaker. So it tells me it's a really important topic. And in terms of reparations, I just draw your attention to the fact that there's presently a petition that has been presented in the House of Commons that came out of Nova Scotia. So we're really big on reparations. But I'd like to go further than Dr. Cricklow's idea about the committee, excuse me, in saying that we actually need an institute, and funding would really be great. And that moves me into the second thing, which is African Nova Scotians as a distinct people. And we often talk about our land acknowledgements of Indigenous people, but it troubles me that we don't do the same acknowledgement to Africa and its people and its land, which is African people we should be doing. So we fail to acknowledge that, and we fail to acknowledge the birthplace of African people in this country, which is in Nova Scotia since 1604, that we've been here over 400 years. And since major influx, if we pick 1965, that means that it was 361 years before other African people even came in any great amounts of numbers into the country. So the UN has recognized this when they came to Canada, that African Nova Scotians should be classified as a distinct people. But I move that all African Canadians should be looked at in terms of distinct and founding people of country, because once we in Nova Scotia are, all of us are. And my third point around how funds are dispersed, we had CBC carry programs up till today over Black business people and others challenging how funds are flowing into the community. And often we call it the golden horseshoe from the middle of the country that we don't get a chance to say who will disperse the funds or who those monies when we do budget and they come into the community. And we have to look at that differently, because especially outside the middle, we're not not always pleased with how that takes place. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Very, very powerful. As I know, we're still working on we're still working on some technical issues. I was wondering if if Karen Chester is here from Community Engagement. Okay. Is Maxine Ferguson Dwyer from Blue Lunar?
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear
Marvelous.
me? So I've been playing about with my Bluetooth.
If you just bring it a little closer to your mouth, that would be great.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can. If you just bring it just a little higher up, and then there we go.
Higher up here?
Excellent.
Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much for putting this together. I just wanted to do a little land acknowledgement that I am here on Treaty 6, also called Edmonton. My name is Maxine Ferguson Dyer, and I'm the owner and founder of Blue Lunar Wellness, a for-profit business where we focus on accessible, evidence-based education from a non-colonialist, collaborative, trauma-informed and healthcare scientist lens. One of the education areas that I cover within the business is sexual health and wellness, and it's part of our educational services.
So,
I wanted to draw attention to this.
Just going to ask you just for a second, we'll stop the clock. Is it, I don't know, maybe if you turn off your camera and just the internet connection is just a little spotty. And I'm wondering if we reduce the bandwidth. Can we just speak for 10 seconds and see if that works?
Test, test, test.
If you just say a few sentences, what's the weather like?
Hello, my name is Maxine. Is this working? Can you hear me clearer? It seems fine on my end, but of course I don't know what you're hearing. Does it work better for you?
We're just checking with our interpreters if the hand signal. No, it's
Yes.
no, unfortunately not just
I can
yet.
go straight to my laptop. Would you
That would
prefer me
be,
to do my laptop instead of hands-free?
yeah, that I'm assuming that would be better. Let's try that. We'll come back to you.
Okay.
So we'll look out for you when you log in.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm wondering if we can go to Rochelle Ignacio for La Conexial and Black-owned market.
Hi, are you able to hear me better now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for having me today. So my name is Rochelle Ignacio. I'm representing La Conexial, and I'm more part of the Black-owned market. So La Conexial is a social enterprise here in Alberta that aims to help African, Black, Caribbean, and Latino communities connect. And they most recently are the parent organization of Black-owned Market Edmonton. And we started in July, and our mandate is to reduce barriers for small Black-owned businesses, entrepreneurs, and creative to bring their product and services to market. What we find is that a lot of these people, they don't have the tools or the resources. There's generational wealth gaps that exist. They don't access funding. And so what we're aiming to do is create a series of workshops which help, like based on a sliding scale, but also help recognize where that person is in their venture, and then help give them the tools and resources that they need to move forward. Also, we've hosted 2 markets during COVID, which I think is something that our team is really proud of. 1 minute. Okay. And it's really like the vendors that we've helped have really said how much of a contribution we make. And what we're requesting is funding, recognizing that we're a group of community volunteers. So what we find is it's really hard to get funding when you're not a non-for-profit. Trying to find those fiscal agents that work with you is challenging. So we're looking for recognition of how we can get funding for these small Black-owned businesses and really fund organizations who are willing to help them from a turn aspect.
Excellent. That was a quick summary. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that, Rochelle. And I'm wondering if we, Franklin, est-ce que vous êtes de retour? Je pense qu'il est en train de garder des affaires. Ami-Clé Fontaine, est-ce que vous êtes là pour la Fondation Sylvanie Lindor?
Oui, je suis là.
Très bien. Si vous pouvez juste approcher le micro à votre... Pouvez-vous juste approcher le micro à votre bouche, s'il vous plaît?
Ok, c'est mieux maintenant?
C'est correct, vous pouvez continuer à parler, oui.
Ok, thank you. Donc, merci de m'avoir donné l'opportunité d'exprimer mon avis sur ce panel. Je suis président et directeur exécutif de la Fondation Sylvain Ledor. C'est une fondation à but non lucratif qui sert les jeunes francophones noirs de Toronto. À travers des programmes de leadership et d'entrepreneuriat depuis sa création en 2011. Nous reconnaissons que la terre sur laquelle nous nous réunissons est le territoire traditionnel de nombreuses nations, y compris les Mississauga du Crédit, et les Anishbeg, les Chippewa, les Ashinobi et les peuples Wenda, et abrite maintenant de nombreux peuples des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis. La première recommandation que j'ai à faire, c'est par rapport à le racisme anti-noir qui est très fréquent à Toronto. Toronto, the Queen City of the country, has the largest Black population in Canada. Every day, anti-Black racism has increased. Fondation Sylvain Ledor pleads for the creation of a historical monument designed to fight Black racism, either in Ottawa, the federal capital of the country, or in Toronto. This monument will be used to foster dialogue and reflection on Black Canadian contribution and to foster vivre ensemble, same as for the Jewish people. Donc, la recommandation, donc les jeunes Canadiens noirs végètent de la pauvreté, une réalité qui les diffère des autres jeunes du pays. Fondation Sylvain Ledor est prête à travailler avec le Black Caucus pour la création d'un fonds social qui donne les jeunes Canadiens noirs accès à l'emploi, l'entrepreneuriat et des formations spéciales pour la création de richesse et aussi pour combattre la pauvreté. La troisième recommandation, c'est concernant la surreprésentation des jeunes Canadiens noirs dans le système de justice canadien. La Fondation Sylvain Ledor demande la création des politiques et de fonds spéciaux qui aident à promouvoir le dialogue autour de la justice, la race, l'inégalité, le système pénal canadien pour diminuer donc, le taux de jeunes Canadiens qui sont en prison. Thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Amekli. C'est exactement 2 minutes. C'était parfait. Et on apprécie vos 3 recommandations. J'aimerais retourner. I would like to return back to Maxon. Are you there?
Can you hear me better now? Does this work?
Yep, they're giving us a thumbs up. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I shan't go over all of it, but I will just continue.
No, you can start from the beginning.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. I'm based here in Edmonton. I know I am British, yes, but I'm an immigrant. My name is Maxine Ferguson-Dyer, and I'm the owner and founder of Blue Lunar Wellness, a for-profit business where we focus on accessible evidence-based education from a non-colonialist, collaborative, trauma-informed, and a healthcare scientist lens. One of the education areas we cover is within sexual health and wellness, and it's part of our educational services that I wanted to draw attention to today. We have clients ranging from local community groups, non-profits, the City of Edmonton, along with universities, amongst others. So we see across the board different needs and depths of where our work can be met. As a business, we focus on improving health outcomes, addressing health inequities within the African Caribbean community. We also work and support other communities, not just here in Treaty 6, but throughout Alberta. As a business, we work on all of the 12 social determinants of health when factoring wellness. And during times of social isolation, COVID, we see more evidently the long-term health needs, around intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and intergenerational trauma. And when we add the other intersections such as cultural, and systemic issues in our community, we need to focus on a holistic approach to health and wellness. Countries have accepted the need for a national policy approach task board around multi-sectoral perspectives, such as the World Health Organization has developed a framework identifying opportunities and challenges, recognized the need for contextualization and adaptation to cultural contexts in order to help promote appropriate, affordable, and accessible sexual health programs of high quality. And the reason I'm here today is because I am trying to demonstrate to you the need that we have within our community to fund sexual health initiatives that focus on, but not limited to, such topics such as STI transmission. I'll wrap up quickly. Healthy relationships, impacts on all social determinants of health inequity, especially health disparities here in Canada, whilst utilizing a holistic ecosystem-based model, or as some people might call it, a rainforest-based model. And thank you.
Thank you very much, and I really do appreciate that. We will move to Abiola
Yes.
Afolabi. So go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I appreciate the extra work you did to get me into this forum. I've been listening to the presentations by other people, and I've learned a lot just from listening. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And my name again is Abiola Afolabi, and I'm a co-founder of the Black Canadians for Cultural Education and Economic Progress. Our head office is in Windsor, Ontario. I'm also a founder and executive director of the Nigerian Canadians for Cultural Education and Economic Progress, which is the older organization than the BCIP. BCIP was founded because people saw what NCIP was doing and decided and asked if we could set up an organization that's bigger to cover all of us rather than limit it to the Nigerians. The mandate of BCIP is actually in the name, which is the overall progress of the community. I've joined this forum today to present the biggest need, what we would like to see in the budget, which has to do with the seniors, especially in our area. I would like to mention too that BCIP does not duplicate any programs. Rather, we complement and we try to fill gaps. Okay, so we would like a special program for housing for our seniors in their later years, as well as a community hub where all ages of the Black community can come together and share ideas, interact, learn from one another, and just have a community, have an ongoing village. Right now, we don't have anything like that in our area. And we're constantly renting here and there. We have to haul our equipment to our events and haul them away. And then some people want to do things like teach, craft, learn, sewing, whatever. It's been very impossible for us right now. And the last thing that we're looking to do is the Black Run food program, like food security. Through the Red Cross, COVID-19 emergency response program, we were able to distribute some foods and some groceries, and that exposed the seriousness, the severity of need in the community. We were able to reach almost 1,000 people within a short period of time, and the list is still growing. So we would like funding for those areas. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much for doing that, Abiola, and I appreciate you checking in from Windsor. I think we have just admitted. You can just hold on for a second, folks. Is there anyone who I have missed? All right, I think the only person then we are just waiting for is Franklin Apap, who is trying to log back in. So what we'll do is that I think since we have not missed anybody else, we're going to go to questions, and then if Franklin comes in, we'll obviously bring him into the conversation. We'll get his presentation. So I have some questions from some from some not constituents, from some colleagues rather. We'll start off with my colleague from Brampton, Ruby Sahota, and one of the long-time members of Black Caucus. Ruby.
Hi, Greg. My question is, I wanted to hear a little bit more in depth about the repatriations. Reparations, sorry, repatriation. Reparations, and whether you see that only in the issue of Blacks in Nova Scotia, or whether there was a more expansive other issues beyond that. I know that a couple of speakers spoke to that, and so I was wondering if I could get a better understanding of all of the different issues, whether it's equity, employment, or other issues that you see that the government should be taking that type of action in.
Lynn, do you want to start that off? Who would like to engage on the question of reparations then?
Wait a minute, I was on mute. I'd love to.
Ah, okay, marvelous.
I was saying
Good.
I'd love to.
All right.
Sorry. Reparations, the organizations that I chair, is the Global African Congress, and it's a global organization. So I certainly do not see reparations as only in Nova Scotia. In fact, it's not only Nova Scotia, it's Canada, and there's no place on the face of the earth that where that African people haven't been or have affected. So reparations belongs everywhere, including the continent. I was merely connecting the reparations to Nova Scotia because of, if you're talking about restitution or anything to do with reparations, then you have to start there in terms of Canada and move out from there, which is why I was trying to point out that it was approximately 361 years for any major influx of other African people actually came into the country, which we don't know. Somebody said earlier, we don't know our history. So if your question is, should reparation, for sure, it's not just Nova Scotia, it's the country. Number one. Number two is that I fail to understand, and I think Tallahassee Coates says it much more eloquently than I can, one of the great scholars of reparations, is that we can't understand how we can talk anything that relates to African people unless we bring in the topic of reparations, which I think is why you saw 3 people even on this panel say that's the number one issue. We tend to talk about everything that we do in isolation of our history. And I use often the Indigenous people as an example who do the exact opposite. Even with the land acknowledgements, they go back to the beginning. I think we really need to start doing that. Nova Scotia is strong on reparations, and I think from the petition, I'm hoping it will pass on reparation and the emancipation acknowledgement that we're looking for. It's presently in the House. At the party, the New Democratic Party came here, and they've accepted the crime against humanity and the reparations and made a commitment. I don't know how far it's come along, that they would try to engage the other parties in recognizing that the importance of reparations and the acknowledgement. So hopefully that answers the question.
So, thank you.
Hi, Greg. May I comment on reparations as well? If that's
go
okay?
ahead. Go ahead, Levin.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for the question, Ruby. An element of reparations is acknowledgement of the injustices which have occurred. Subsequent to that acknowledgement, it requires undertaking systematic initiatives to offset those injustices. And that can look like access to resources that allow for self-reliance and self-determination. The work that the Foundation for Black Communities is looking at in terms of ensuring Black communities have the resources to address, for them to do the work to address those injustices, is inherently a part of the work of reparations. So I'm really glad that my colleagues and peers on this have spoken to that issue, because reparations is really at the heart of allocating resources in the hands of Black Canadians so that they can determine their own solution making. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi,
Stephen.
and I just wanted to also point out that reparations also means cash in hand for the descendants of communities that were disenfranchised throughout our history as a country. And let's not forget that. I think also reparations looks like creating things like the Canadian Institute for People of African Descent, and also cultural centers that have been discussed throughout this conversation. It also looks like providing consistent funding to post-secondary institutions in order to recruit Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black business folks in this country. It's about changing a system in the government that has all the top executives being white. Right, it's not lost on Canadians that today we have one minister that is Black. It's not lost on Canadians that we have one deputy minister that is Black. These are symptoms of systemic anti-Black racism in our country, and reparations looks at changing those systems, which allows for those things to take place.
So, Ruby, you've started a really good conversation here. And there's just one which I want to just add to, because what Taib had said. In the case of Africville in Halifax, when the city of Halifax had offered an apology, the reparations which they gave wasn't to individuals, but it was to the community. Is that an acceptable form of reparations? I've heard both. I've heard different views on this.
It never has, and that apology that took place was not part of a reparations heading. So, as far as we're concerned, there's been absolutely no reparations being given in the country. In fact, I've taken part in no less than 3 demonstrations in the last little while, and there's more coming that are spearheaded by Africville. And the theme is reparations now. Because they have not received reparations. They received a payment, but they have not received reparations.
I'd like to point out, sorry, this is Alicia from Black Women United. I'd also like to point out in regards to reparations, I'm not too sure how many people are familiar with Saskatchewan and Albertan Black settler history, but exactly the same thing that happened in Nova Scotia happened here in Alberta in the early 1900s. A lot of Black families, approximately 1,000 Black families came to the prairies, and they were met with extreme hardship. There was multiple attempts to stamp them out, and within 10 years, the federal government banned any migration of Blacks to the West. So reparations, I think yes, we need to start at the beginning and go back to Nova Scotia, but we also need to have a good understanding of the communities that were set up early on in the establishment of Canada. So, Blacks that came to Alberta and Saskatchewan, that was when those provinces were first being established. And then there's also the Underground Railroad community in Ontario. And I think that the reparations need to be included for all of those people. And I think that it does look like cash in hand, but it also looks like investment into the communities and a greater voice for Black Canadians.
Very good. Very quickly then, because we're going to go to the second question.
Yeah, and just to add, Sierra Leoneans in Canada have been talking. I am from Sierra Leone, was the president of Sierra Leone, and Black Nova Scotians has a history related to Freetown. In fact, up to today, the city is called Freetown because of these Black Canadians who are taking there, and the city as it is known today, Freetown. And we have a lot in Nova Scotia. Especially in Alberta here, we have a large contingent, and we have so yes, the reparation also is what Sierra Leoneans have been looking for, talking about in terms of that. I just wanted to throw that in as well.
Very good. I understand there's also some homes in Sierra Leone which are called Nova Scotia homes, precisely because they came from the blacks, freed blacks from Nova Scotia who returned to Sierra Leone. Marcia, Ian.
Thanks so much, Greg. This has been amazing today. I've learned so very much. My question is for Gwen from Equal Chance. And Gwen, you talked about a lot of important things, but want to delve just a little bit deeper into mental health and youth mental health, because you talked about the necessity for a program specifically for kids of color, specifically for Black youth. Can you tell us why that's important?
Well, that is absolutely important because as we were hosting our monthly, which have now became bi-weekly healing circles with members of the community. So through Equal Chance, we have a mental health program which was funded by the Canadian Red Cross, and that allows members of the community to have up to between 15 to 20 free sessions with a mental health specialist. And we realized that the majority, 82.1% of the people that use that service at Equal Chance are youth. And so for us, we see there that there is a need, and a lot of the youth that come into that use the service have told us that they appreciate being able to speak to a Black mental health specialist, or to a Black mental health specialist that is a member of the LGBTQ community, for example, for some of them. And so this is why for us, we strongly believe that it is extremely important. And we've seen children use the service as well, not as much as youth, but we do have some children. A lot of these children actually come from this address in Vanier, this social housing address. It's a temporary housing place for homeless Black families. And we were very shocked, myself, members of the team and the volunteers, to see a place like this in a country like Canada, where you have families between 7 people to 9 people who live in a 1-bedroom apartment. When we went there, we were sent by the Catholic Center for Immigrants for one family. And when we brought them food as we were coming out, there is at least 20 kids, 20 children between the ages of 3 to 9 years old who ran after us, were grabbing our coats. Please, please, my mom did not eat today. Can you please give her food? A 5-year-old girl ran to get her mother. And when she came out, we asked if the whole building is like this, and they said yes. So we started knocking on each door, and we realized that every single person in this building needs support. They need mental health support. They need better housing. And so we put it as one of our priorities.
Thanks so much, Gwen. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. And if I can say also for those who are on the call today, if this Saturday, we're organizing a holiday surprise for these families in Vanier and in Overbrook. We will be giving them presents with the help of Odo's BMW here in Ottawa, and other groups, Presidential Hoops, the Association of African Canadians here. So if there are people here who would like to volunteer this Saturday and help us out, please send an email to operations@equalchance.ca. We will be handing gifts to these children and food baskets for the families that they could keep for at least 3 weeks, the food baskets.
If people didn't get that email address, I'm certain we could repeat that at the end of, or near the end of the session, Gwen. All right. I have a question for Taib. Taib, on the Employment Equity Act, in terms of that we amend the Employment Equity Act was one of your recommendations. Clearly, the Employment Equity Act only mentions visible minorities, and we know how Black people get lost in that term of visible minorities. I was wondering if your research or your experience can add to that thought, if you could expand on that a little bit. Did we lose Taib? Oh, we seem to have lost him. Oh, to Drat. All right. Then moving on. Thank you for that question to Gwen. Sorry, Adam, do you have a question?
Yeah, to Liban, you referenced a study, I think it came out of Ottawa University, with respect to for every $100 of donation or support from foundations and charitable organizations, only 30 cents is directed towards Black-led organizations. Is there a way we can, I haven't seen or heard that study before, and it is as shocking as it is offensive, quite frankly. Is there a way you could forward that to us? In terms of getting it to Greg and Greg to the rest of us, we're being asked by a lot of charitable organizations for support during COVID, and it would seem to me that there's an accountability issue here that needs to be pursued. So that's the first point, and the second one around reparations. We have heard today talk about the Canadian Institute for Advancement of African and Black Canadians that is currently being orchestrated with federal support in Ottawa. I'm curious as to whether that's the mechanism to both work on the wording of what the apology and acknowledgement around Emancipation Day and the end of slavery should be, but also whether or not you see that as a national organization capable of also setting priorities and decisions to make sure that it's recognized regionally in the ways that the Black experience is regionalized across the country. I guess that's to Lynn.
I didn't mention that particular institute. The sad thing about reparations in Canada is we don't have a vehicle across the country for the right hand to know what the left hand is doing. Yeah. And so therefore we're working in these little pockets doing things, but we don't know what each other's doing. So for example, in Nova Scotia, we've been looking at the idea of a reparations institute. We also have a new institute that is part of the college here on slavery, the only one of its kind in Canada. So in terms of this wording that you speak of, where the institute is just started and we've just hired somebody's just been hired to head up the actual creation of the Institute on Slavery, whether they will be doing that kind of thing or we will be working through that with our organization and our idea about the Institute. So I don't think that we're that far advanced to know exactly. But now that I'm hearing more people, like I wasn't even aware of, and I know Dr. Wesley, I certainly after this call will be following up to find out what he's doing from his perspective. And the other speakers were fabulous. I don't know how we connect with the other people on this call because we're not connected on the reparations issue.
Well, so on that last point, for all participants here and as well, we will be publishing a summary document of what we heard here and what we believe is the consensus issues where that exists, and of course we will have all participating organizations listed in the appendix, so that will give you an opportunity to reach out and to create those networks, which are just so necessary for us to advance together.
Thank you.
Question?
Sure. Thank you.
Sorry, Lynn, my apologies. Were you saying something? Did I cut you
No,
off?
I was just saying the organization to Greg. This is great, the networking, but if we could have the people that were having the conversation on reparations, I would be interested in that because I don't remember exactly which organization they were with.
We can break that out.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for your question. So we'll absolutely share it. I believe some of the members of Parliament here have received it as they were included in a letter submitted by up to 20 leading foundations in Canada following the report endorsing one of the main recommendations in that study, which was the creation of a dedicated Black foundation to serve and support Black-led, Black serving organizations in a philanthropic capacity. So for those on the call, who are interested in the study, you can find it at www.forblackcommunities.org. For the members of Parliament, subsequent to this call, we'll ensure I have access to all of your emails. I'll ensure that a copy is sent to you along with the letters of support. Frankly, what we're discussing, Adam, and what that report points to is a significant amount of neglect facing Black communities. There was a corresponding needs assessment that speaks to had the Canadian government not invested significant dollars in the stabilization of that emergency dollars provided to not-for-profit organizations, I think the Black community would have been an even steeper hole. So I think some congratulations and kudos for that timely investment needs to be recognized. But right now, we know that earthquakes, they certainly are shocking, but the aftershock is worse. And as I mentioned, Black communities are currently facing a significant destabilization with their lead service providers struggling to survive. And we worry that in the next 5 to 10 years, Black communities are going to, in fact, be in a far worse position than they are now when you start thinking about inequities as you count them as clear data points. So the encouragement to this government is to recognize that the best plans are for those when you don't have control, right? That's when you think about what needs to be done. And Black communities have continually been ignored over significant periods of time when there's changes in government or when there's a practice of austerity. And I think we can all imagine that'll be what the next 10 to 15 years of government looks like as we pay back what is almost a $400 billion deficit, right? And of that $400 billion deficit, if I may respectfully say, about $12 billion of that sits on the shoulders of Black people simply as a result of our proportional representation in this country. So we've taken on approximately $12 billion worth of debt this year alone for that generations of Black folks will have to pay back. And we're not able to clearly point to what the benefits of that debt have been. So not only are we talking about reparations of past injustice, we're now carrying the burden of this recovery without clear indication of how we're going to recover equitably as a part of it. I'll leave it there. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Lieben. And once again, I'll just repeat that address. It's www.forblackcommunities.org. Great, folks.
Sorry, Greg, I just one last question to Nico and Queen in terms of arts funding and in terms of the cultural investments to support a system of galleries and performance spaces to accommodate the cultural practices that they identified. I'm curious as to what the relationship to BAND, the Black Artists Network Dialogue organization, and that ask that's been forwarded in previous conversations from Karen Carter and her organization, what the relationship is between their ask and that ask, and whether or not they're part of the same cohort of requests being made of us from Black artists.
So we have worked with BAND in the past. I didn't know that they had put in a similar submission, but yes, it is very similar to what we've requested. I do think that also, I don't think we got to say that there's not a lot of operational funding as well for Black organizations. So that also makes it harder for organizations to be sustainable, specifically Black arts and cultural organizations. I hope that answered your question. I actually had 2 questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So you stated that you'd be putting out a forum with all the recommendations. Mm-hmm. Will it be strategically placed so arts organizations will be in a section, economics, will it be strategically placed in that way?
We haven't written it yet.
Oh.
Would you like it that way?
I think it would be beneficial to have it the recommendations so that we could see the similarity in the ask as well. Because I've heard on more than one occasion here that, folks are wanting the same thing. So for the purposes of networking as well, we could look to see other organizations that have similar mandates, similar needs, so that we could work more collectively together.
Excellent.
And then
Yeah.
so then the second was more like a comment. We had like a bunch of notes that we had put together for the meeting, and then we realized we would have went over the 2 minutes. Is it possible for us to email you our notes?
Absolutely. And I say this to every group, if there are some issues which have come up which you think are important to mention for the committee's consideration, please do send them to us. We ask you to send it to us as soon as possible. We're going to be starting work on this report very shortly, and we would like to obviously have a draft in the early new year, and then to be able to publish it. The idea is to publish it by the time Parliament returns. So if you can get it to us as soon as possible, that would be great. And we'd love to add on whatever additional things, if part of this conversation has inspired you to mention, to think of a different aspect, please do send it to us.
Yes, I also want to thank Adam Baum for the question. We're actually a part of your writing, and we're also the artist in residence for Waterfront Toronto.
I've jogged past there. Great. Good. Thank you all for participating. For those of you who just joined us for this panel, this has been 2 days. We've received slightly over 100 submissions, written submissions. We've had about 80 people present to us over the last 2 days. We are going to be, we've taken extensive notes. We have a researcher who is working with us, who is going to be making sure that we didn't miss anything. We have captured this conversation so that we could make sure that we reflect your needs. And we're going to do the ungrateful job and the unthanked job of trying to form a consensus document. So there will be things that we will mention that you will be pleased about. There were things that you're going to say, "Oh, I wish I'd put more of an emphasis," but we're really trying to reflect the consensus that was brought here today. So we will do our level best. But one thing you can be sure of is all the parliamentarians who are here now, all the members of Parliamentary Black Caucus, we are particularly concerned, and we want to see progress being made for Black Canadians across this country. This is a non-partisan group. We have members from all political parties who are here. We have from both houses of Parliament. On prend notre dévouement envers les communautés des Noirs au Canada très au sérieux. Alors, vous pouvez compter sur nous de continuer à faire ce travail-là, et nous espérons, et ça c'est notre seul objectif, que le jour où est-ce qu'on va quitter la politique, on peut dire qu'on avait fait une différence, et puis on a contribué à la santé, à la prospérité et par la sens de justice pour tous les Canadiens de race noire. Merci beaucoup de votre présence ici aujourd'hui. Merci pour tout le travail que vous faites dans vos communautés. C'est incroyable ce que vous faites, et puis nous en sommes très reconnaissants.
Thank you.
And thank you, Greg.
Thank you, everyone.
That's a lot of sharing you've done. Thank you very much.
Marcy, congratulations.
Thanks, Greg. It was a great work.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Now, guys, this
you.
is like Black Parliamentary Association. I just happened to be in Ottawa today.
No. Greg, I've been on these calls with you for 2 days. You've done a lot of work. Thank you.
Yes, it's been great.
Greg, you deserve it.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, everyone.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Marcy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Mwah. Take care. Bye.